My name is Angelica Faber. I'm a security architect with the GPS Americas team. And I work exclusively with partners. And most of those are MSSPs and some adventurous ISVs too. All right, so let's get going. So quick, I'm just gonna do the slides mostly for MSSP architecture review, which is gonna be a quick one, and then we'll jump into the demo, which is gonna be pretty much a marathon of Sentinel. We'll cover as much as possible. We will give you a break in between those. So just please keep the questions coming. I will try to keep an eye on the chat. But hopefully somebody else can also keep an eye and let me know if there's any questions. Let's see. Also, maybe we also have some time later to take some breaks in between to do some Q&A too. And actually, I am sharing two links in this slide. One is the aka.ms Sentinel links, because I will reference quite a bit of links as I go. And so that's kind of like the central point where we try to keep them all. And then the other side, I have my blog. That's another item that I share a lot as I go. So I just wanted to share those two ahead of time so that you have them as I talk about all these different subjects. So the very first thing I wanted to cover is within the architecture is that the Sentinel should be deployed on an isolated subscription. Even better, a whole separate management group if you can, and that the reason for that is to be able to isolate permissions. So because this is security data, you want to be preventing permissions from being inherited from people that shouldn't have access to it. So that's why it's recommended that it should be an isolated subscription. And I'll talk a little bit more about permissions as I go. So to be able to create the log analytics workspace, because Sentinel, as Zach was saying earlier, runs on a law, which is a log analytics workspace. So to be able to create that, the user is going to need at least contributor role within that subscription. Also, keep in mind that someone's going to have owner permission so that they can delegate the required access over the workspace to other users. And like I said, permissions are inherited. So any users that are assigned permissions at management group level, they're going to inherit those permissions at subscription, resource group, and resource level too. So that's why we want to make sure that that's done correctly. This is a slide that he shared previously. I'm not going to go into it. I did want to mention a few things. One is that these integrations with the native data connectors, specifically with Defender 365, Defender for Cloud, those are bidirectional. So if you make a change on Sentinel, if you close the ticket in Sentinel, it'll be automatically closed on Defender. And if it's closed on Defender, it'll be automatically closed on Sentinel. The other thing that I will point out as I go is that you do get these links within the incident itself. So you can actually, as a SOC analyst, you can jump back and forth to investigate additional information that you need from another portal. And I'll show that as I go. And then on the partner or the third party connectors, some of those are supported by Microsoft. Some of them are supported by the partners, and some of them are supported by the community. And that's stated pretty clearly in the documentation. I think it's actually also stated in Content Hub too. And I'll go through Content Hub in a little bit. And also now, this was a recent change. So even connectors and all sorts of artifacts, analytics rules, connectors, and everything else, if you haven't installed a solution in Content Hub, you're not going to be able to see the template for it. So make sure that if you don't see something, make sure you go check Content Hub. That's where it's going to be at. I think the other thing that I wanted to, let you know is that as partners, you can create your own connectors too. You can create them for yourselves, and you can create them to be placed in Content Hub as well. One of the easiest ways to do this is using the Codeless Connector platform, which is one of the links that I have on that list of links. All right, that was the only few things that I wanted to add. He covered this really well, so I'm not going to go into this. I will cover data collection rules. He covered it from the agent's perspective. I just wanted to let you know that data collection rules are also can be used not just within the agent, but they can be used for other types of ingestion. Like one of the ones that I have data collection rules is on my AWS configuration. So I'll show you that so that you can see they're super powerful, and they're a great way to filter out data that you don't want to ingest, that you don't want to pay for. So it's a good way also to save money. All right. And okay, so this diagram, and I realize that we're talking to partners, but many of you are MSSPs, or you're going to be managing Sentinel for your customers. So I wanted to show you an overview of what that architecture should look like. And in fact, it's the architecture that you're going to see in my demo. So it'll make more sense if I explain to you why you're seeing all these different workspaces from different tenants. So this, at the very core, again, of Sentinel is that log analytics workspace, which exists within a subscription. That subscription is associated with a tenant. And both Sentinel and the log analytics workspace exist within the subscription. But for your users, your SOC analysts, to have access to your customer subscriptions, they're going to need, that's where we need Azure Lighthouse. And I'll actually demo the configuration for Azure Lighthouse so that you can see, one, how you would do it in a case of like a POC, if you're doing a POC, because that's going to be the template one. There's also the offer that Dave shared earlier this week. I think it was Tuesday. And I can't show you how to create an offer because I don't have access to Partner Center, but I'll show you what that looks like as well. And let's see. Also, partners that are CSPs can create subscriptions. So if you have a customer that doesn't have a security subscription, or maybe they just have Microsoft 365, they have a tenant, but they don't have a subscription. As a CSP, you can create a subscription for your partner. You can, and even if they have 20 subscriptions already, and they're all associated with their enterprise agreement, you can still create a separate subscription that can be billed through the partner if you're a CSP. So again, keep that in mind as we go along. The access through Azure Lighthouse, it's going to be at subscription level. So anything that I'm accessing here is, see how my arrow, I was very intentional about where this arrow lands. It lands at the subscription level. It isn't a tenant level access. For that, if you wanted to manage tenant level resources like Defender 365 or Microsoft 365 or anything like that, anything at tenant level, you would have to use either B2B or GDAP. And if we have time later, I'll cover that. But for now, I just want to make sure Sentinel, subscription level, Azure Lighthouse is at subscription level. Okay. I will actually skip this because I'm actually going to show you how this works. So I'm going to, just want to make sure that I didn't cover any of my notes. Yeah, okay. I will show you this. Okay, so when we're talking about having a two sides, you have your customer side and you have your MSSP side. The questions that I'll often get is like, what do you keep where, right? And the idea of the artifacts that you're going to keep over here is really mainly anything that you consider to be intellectual property, anything that you don't want, you want to protect. You don't want anybody or even your customers to be able to have access to. And then on the customer tenant, many of the artifacts, like the artifacts that are out of the box, they're going to exist already over here. You can push artifacts, and I'll demo how you can push those artifacts to your customers' tenants. But most importantly, the customer data should always remain within the customer workspace. That's really the architecture that is supported. And many of the connectors, like the Defender 365 connector, it depends on that architecture to be able to work correctly. Because you're bringing in tenant level data into that subscription, and it's not going to work unless it's a subscription that is associated with that tenant. And also UEBA that Zach was talking about, that's not going to work correctly unless you have it on the customer on a subscription that is associated with the customer tenant. So it is associated with the customer tenant, but your team still has access to it to manage it and everything. But the tenant and the end users that exist and everything about the directory associated with it is within the customer side. So just again, as we go along, keep that in mind. All right, so I'm going to jump right into the demo, stop sharing. All right, I'm actually going to start with, I'm not going to start with Sentinel. I'm going to start with a tool. And this is one of the links that I have shared in the list of links, aka.ms Sentinel all-in-one. If you don't want to go to the other one and you want to go to this directly, this is a tool that was created by the Sentinel product team, and this is actually version 2 of it. And what they're doing here is making it easier for you to deploy Sentinel to get going. And think of this as like a starting point. I'm going to deploy it so that you see what it does. I'm not going to deploy it all the way, but I'm going to walk you through the deployment so you can see what it does. But keep in mind that this can be just a starting point. You can clone this and make it your own, and make different options as you go. So this is actually going to create your research group. It's going to create the log analytics workspace. It's going to install or really onboard Sentinel on top of that workspace. And then it's even going to set a workspace retention, a daily cap, and if you wanted to, commitment tiers. It's also going to enable UEBA because UEBA is not enabled by default. Fusion is enabled by default, but UEBA is not. It's also going to enable health diagnostics. And this is very important because there are certain features that I'm going to be showing you with like analytic rules and data connectors that are not going to work unless health diagnostics is enabled. Especially monitoring, like monitoring of those analytics rules and monitoring of the data connectors and things like that. It's not going to work unless you have enabled that. It's also going to install certain Content Hub solutions, and it's going to give you a list of options to install that. And then it's also going to enable the analytics rules that are associated, if you choose to, that are associated with those Content Hub solutions and with those data connectors. So it's a really great tool to get going pretty fast for you and for your customers as well. So I'm going to walk you through it just so that you can see what's available. And I'm just going to put some test RG, which I'm not going to create, and some test workspace. And so here, this is the daily ingestion cap limit that you would do. And it doesn't, there are certain tables that it doesn't apply to, but if you wanted to have a cap, like a maximum that you want to ingest, you can set that here. Number of days of retention, and it defaults to 90, and I'll tell you why. In Sentinel, anything that you're ingesting for the first 90 days is actually, there's no retention charged on it. So anything beyond 90 days will be charged retention. And so this is why it's defaulting to 90. You could do, but obviously you can change that to whatever you need it to be. You can do pay as you go, or you can do commitment tiers too with this one. And you can, we'll move through the settings. Again, here, you just check a box. You can enable UEBA. You can enable diagnostics. You can choose certain content hub solutions. So these are the ones that are presented as an option, but and some of these are actually like some of the most common ones: Azure Active Directory, Azure Activity, Defender for Cloud, Defender for Endpoint, so Microsoft 365. So some of these are actually some of the most popular ones. It also has additional essentials content, like the network session essentials, which is another popular one. And even the SOC process framework, which I'm actually going to spend some time with this one in a little bit, because I think that's a super valuable one, and the UEBA essentials one. Training and tutorials content. This is another one that I always highlight to partners, and I'll show you what these are in a minute. I just wanted to show you that you can deploy this using this tool. Data connectors, again, based on the content hub solutions that you have enabled, you can select to onboard those. And then by checking this box, you're going to be able to enable all of those security schedule alerts that are going to come with those solutions. Because as you'll see in it, and I think I saw some of the ones that Zach was showing, a lot of those content hub solutions, it's not just the connector, it's a whole package. And a lot of the package are those alerts. So if you check this box, it'll enable them for you. So this is a really great way to get going. I'm not going to run this because I already have a few that we can work with. But I wanted to show you that tool. All right, and before I jump into Sentinel, I'm going to show you that, as you can see, I have 3 workspaces here, and they're 3 different tenants. All of these are my tenants in one way, shape, or another. For this scenario, this is the one that is serving as the MSSP tenant, and these 2 are the ones that are my customers. And so I'm going to show you how I did that. And I'm going to just open a new one. So this is the part that uses Azure Lighthouse. Let's see. And I'm going to go to my customers first. And actually, you know what? I'm going to go from what the customer sees, the customer tenant. So I'm going to bring over this tenant, which is my customer tenant. And I'm going to go to service providers. So if I'm a customer, I'm going to go in and add delegate access to an MSSP. I can add the offer via template or via marketplace. Via marketplace, this is through Partner Center. But via template, I just need to create a template that I would then drop here, and then the results of that are these. I'm going to build the template on the other side, on the MSSP side, so that you can see what you would build, what that file would look like. And by the way, a customer can delegate access to more than one MSSP. As you can see here, there's 2 MSSPs that have been delegated access. Okay, so I'm going to create the ARM template. I'm just going to create a sample one. I think Dave worked through this, but I don't know who was on Tuesday's call, so I'm going to walk through it really fast. Take me 2 minutes. I can delegate access at subscription level or resource group level. Ideally, subscription level. If there's some issue that your customer, I don't know, only wants to work with one subscription and has to do it at resource group level, then resource group level, but ideally subscription. And then when you build your role assignments, you have 2 options. In your case, you should really do it at group level because you're going to have people coming in and out of your SOC teams. So you don't want to have to do this more than once. If you have automation, then you'll need the service principal one, but the user one you rarely need unless you're doing some kind of special test. And so then, in my case, I would pick SOC tier, whatever team, and I can have different types of groups with different levels of permission. So I'm just going to pick this one. and let's say level 3 people, they're going to have Sentinel contributor. And I could choose to have it permanent or eligible. Eligible would be at, like a PIM type, privileged identity management, where you can make it that they need to activate it before they can access. And some customers have requirements where you have to have that. And I'm going to add it here just so that you can see that you can add more. Also, in order for you to see, to have permissions to see your customers, there's one permission that you're going to need, and that's the generic reader permission. So not like the Sentinel reader, but the generic one. Of course, I scroll. There it is, this one. This generic reader, if you don't add that, you're not going to be able to actually see your customers. But the idea here is that you would build all your, SOC level 3, SOC level 2, SOC level 1, IR, whatever it might be the permissions that you're doing, and you would build them separate with different permissions, and then you create that offer or the template. You can download this one, which is the one that you would upload to the customer side, and that would be your configuration. But there's certain scenarios that require permissions that you just can't do through clicking here. And those permissions, I'm actually going to show you a sample of a template. So you can see, so like this is my template that I downloaded, but I've actually modified this template. And what I added here is another, sorry, one sec. Okay, it's too early for me to start losing my voice. Okay, so this one has, and besides like giving the regular permissions that I was showing you, this one I have modified. And I added delegated role permission, delegated role definition IDs. This scenario is the scenario where you would have SOC analysts that actually need to be able to assign permissions within the customer tenant. So, and that happens to be the case for playbooks. Normally, you run a playbook on the customer tenant. A lot of them have an identity associated with that playbook. And so you need to assign permissions to the identity associated with that playbook. And if your SOC analyst doesn't have the permissions necessary to be able to grant permissions, then that's not going to work. So what you end up having to do here is that you're adding this role definition, which actually this role definition ID is the user access administrator role definition ID. And it's not your regular user access administrator. It is used by Lighthouse to say, hey, this person is going to have the ability to assign permissions. And what are the permissions that they have the ability to assign? These, whatever role IDs are associated. So like if you wanted SOC analysts to be able to assign Sentinel contributor, then that role ID would have to be listed here. So that this is how you would do that type of assignment. So you download this, and then you modify it, and then you upload it. So what ends up looking like, and I'm going to not save that one, I'm going to show you the ones that I have, is, let's see, let's look at this one. Role assignments. See, this one has like my SOC team, and I have a Logic App contributor for my SOC teams, but then they also have the ability to assign this permissions to identities within the customer workspace. And again, that's really going to become the necessity when you're managing playbooks on that customer's workspace. So, and I just wanted to show you that scenario. And okay, so now what happens is once I have configured this and I have granted my users access to those customers, then suddenly I'm going to be able to start seeing them here. I see them through my customers on Lighthouse, but I also see them through Sentinel because I granted them Sentinel permissions. What that does is, first of all, I can go into these workspaces and just, do the regular management that I need to do from those customers' workspaces. But I can also get access to, like, for example, view incidents across those customers. So if you see here, it shows another column directory. So there's a combination of different customers here that I'm able to see because I have access to using Lighthouse. So, and by the way, through here is not the only place that I would have access to. Like, even if I work from my MSSP workspace, which is what I'm going to start working out of now, I'm still going to be able, and I'm going to show you some workbooks in a minute that you're going to see that I'm going to be able to see across workspaces. So it's not just that view that I showed you. When I'll show you some workbooks in here, and I'm going to minimize this, but when I show you some workbooks here, you're going to see that I can see across workbooks. Okay, let's see. I'm going to start with Content Hub. And again, like I said earlier, you have to install these. If you don't install them, you're not going to be able to see the templates. Like if I go here, and this is what I mean. If I go here to Analytics and I go to Rule Templates, I'm not going to be able to see, like, somebody's, saying, hey, they have this template here, I don't have it. It's likely because you haven't installed your solution through Content Hub. So make sure you install that Content Hub solution in order to be able to see that template. Okay, so some of the ones that I was telling you earlier that are important, I think, in my view. Number one is training ones, the KQL training one and the Microsoft Sentinel training lab, which I saw was updated recently, which is good because there were a few things that were a little bit behind. But this one is, this actually comes even with some custom data or some, like, it's not a whole lot, but it is enough for like a SOC analyst to like walk themselves through what Sentinel looks like. And it does do the setting up of the environment from, like, if you wanted to do it manually, if you don't want to use that other solution that I showed you, the all-in-one, and you want to do, they just want to create their own workspace and put their own data connectors, they can walk themselves through this. It's actually very nice. It does like really good overviews and it walks you through everything that you would do. I think it's because there's only so much training or so much learning that you can do watching somebody else do it. I think a lot, for me personally, I learn better by doing. And what I like about that one is that it comes with like, I think it comes with like 3 incidents right out of the box, so you can actually see and walk through most of the default stuff. So it's a good one to keep in mind. The other one that I mentioned earlier is the SOC process framework. This was created by Rin Yuri. You probably know him. Good guy. Who used to be a GBB but now moved on to another position. And he created this, and I think it's really fantastic. It comes with one playbook and it comes with a few workbooks. This is the main one, and I'm going to jump into this. I have it installed already, so I'm going to jump to see it so you can see it. It should not be loaded because I actually, let me go at it from over here, which is where I should go for it. So, where is it? Here we go. Process. All right. So, are you gonna have this? Choose to have this guide or not have this guide. It's up to you. You can turn it off. Also, this customer, you can actually modify this and adjust it to, be for your. You could just edit, because actually that's another thing to keep in mind. All these workbooks are really just templates. You can modify them and rename them, and suddenly they're your own. So just see this again as like a starting point. You don't have to use this as it comes. You can just modify it and make it your own. But this one's I think it's a really great one. So this one has the procedure flow, everything that is important to a SOC team, the core procedures. It actually also helps you track your CMMI, your SOC capability maturity model integration, and you can track this as you go. This comes, one of the artifacts that comes with these are some watch lists too. So I'll show you how to modify those watch lists in a minute. But you can track your progress. You can update your contacts. So for example, I updated myself as a contact here, and I did that through a watch list, which I will show you in a little bit. You can, the SOC workstations, the pager contact. It also has the, actually, I'll skip that one, roles and responsibilities. So many of you already have your, standard roles and responsibilities, but still sometimes people want to say, hey, what are other SOC teams doing? So this is kind of like a, hey, this would be an ideal SOC level 1 analyst, an ideal SOC level 2, an ideal SOC level 3, even manager for incident response, the incident response analyst. So he's really put a lot of effort into this, and I think it's super useful information to have. And then he also walks through the how you would build a SOC team from part-time all the way to like a large team, and he kind of walks you through the people and processes, the tooling, the support functions, and I'll skip to the large one so you can see the difference. The whole building of your SOC team and how you would go about it and what their responsibilities would be, and things that I think are useful, especially if you're putting a brand new team together. And even the incident response planning, this one's again, is something that you can track and show progress also, I guess, to management through this. Even the whole incident response framework through investigation, remediation, and postmortem as well. And again, this doesn't have to be what you follow, but it is a tool that I think is super useful. So I wanted to spend a few minutes to share that with you so that you're aware that that is a resource that is available to you. It's free and it's available on Content Hub. Actually, and I'm going to show you a few more here. There was some chat comments earlier. They were talking about solutions. We have solutions for NIST. There's the NIST 853 solution, which I actually have installed here. This is another really nice workbook that is available to you. I'm going to see if it actually works from here this time. And here it is. And by the way, whenever these things light up, it means that I have data coming in. Like this one is because I don't have any data coming in for that one. And also, by the way, I am in the middle of moving from one tenant to another. So you're going to see me jumping around a little bit here and there. Okay, so this is a solution that is available to you. This is the NIST 853 solution. This, again, it's out of the box like this. You can modify it as needed. But I think it's pretty good. Some of this data might be coming from other solutions, like some of this, in my case, might be coming from Defender for Cloud. So if in the case of the buttons that I get in here for recommendations, if I have the permissions to remediate that, I can take action from here. If I don't have permissions, I won't be able to make those changes. You can see recommendations over time, recommendations by asset. You can see, and you can also see the controls and how you're tracking towards those controls. You can even get additional information on some of them. Like if I expand some of these, I can actually get additional information on what AC2 is. If I click on, and even here, I have the recommended logs associated with meeting that one. The how I would go about implementing it, and even the link to the NIST.gov URL to get additional information on that particular AC2. So it's a lot of information. I think it's very useful as it comes out of the box. But by the way, these teams are always lovely. They love to hear from you guys, from your partners. So if you have feedback, take the survey, provide feedbacks on this. They love to hear from you. So that's one solution. And what was the, oh, there's one. So that was the NIST 853. There's also a CMMC one, CMMC, Cybersecurity Maturity Model one, and there's a Zero Trust one too. Actually, I want to take a minute to show that one because that one actually has like the actual connectors that I recommended, which I think is super useful. So let me see. Is it here? I can't remember where it is. Oh, recommended data connectors. Yeah, there it is. So it has a lot of the data that I was showing you. This is obviously tracking a different framework, which is the Zero Trust framework. But this one has recommended data connectors too. So it'll show you if it's connected, if it's not connected. You can enable the connector as well from here. Okay. Actually, I'm gonna see. I know I still have a lot of to do, so I'm gonna continue to go Indranil until 1 p.m. and then we'll take a break at that time. Is that good?
Yeah, that will be perfect.
Okay. All right. So then, okay, let's talk about connectors. And even though I did talk a little bit about connectors already, let's continue to talk about connectors. Let's see. So some of the connectors that I have in here, in my old tenant, which I can show you in a little bit, I had the old AWS connector. That one only connected to CloudTrail, but the new one connects to S3 buckets. So it actually can process additional types of logs. You can do AWS CloudTrail, VPC flow logs, GuardDuty. I actually wanted to show you this one because this one actually comes with a PowerShell script. You can't do it manually and has a link to go to do it manually if you want to, but it actually comes with a script that you can just download and run. It will require that you have PowerShell because it's a PowerShell script, and it will require that you have installed the AWS CLI because that's what it does in order to, and not only have it installed, but also have it configured so that it can actually authenticate to AWS to make the changes that are required. So this is just makes it a little bit easier to configure that. And then you go about and add whatever sources of, and you can, add, like I said, VPC, GuardDuty, CloudTrail, CloudWatch, the sources that you have that you need connected. Some of the ones that are super important for, especially if you have a Microsoft customer, Azure Active Directory, pretty straightforward to set up. I used to have some issues, but I haven't seen those recently, where it would, like if you already had some kind of policy in place, an Azure policy in place, because it uses an Azure policy. But if you had an Azure policy in place, it would give you some issues, but I haven't seen that lately. But if you do, just go to the subscription or to that level. Sorry, it wasn't the Azure activity. It was the Azure activity one that I had issues with, not this one. And then what else? I did want to show you some that have AMA agent on it so that I could show you but I'm going to have to jump into another tenant. Actually, I can jump from here. I'm going to jump here. And connectors. I wanted to show you one that had the AMA agent so that I could show you a DCR. AMA. This one has AMA. So this connector is using the Windows security events with AMA. And so it has click twice, a DCR, which is a data collection rule. And Zach talked about them in relationship to the AMA agent, but I'm also going to show you how you can do this, the same type of rule, but for not specifically for agent. In here, you would add the resources that are associated with it. And by the way, so this is important. If you deploy this data collection rule to these resources, the AMA agent is going to automatically be installed. How, and in some cases, these are VMs that are within Azure, so that makes it very easy. But if there are VMs that are on-prem or in some other cloud, you need the Arc agent. The Arc agent is basically going to allow those resources to be able to show up here. So once they show up here, then you just point that data collection rule to those resources, and then the AMA agent will automatically be installed. That's one of the ways to install the AMA agent on scale. So keep that in mind. The other thing is, this is the great feature about data collection rules and the AMA agent, is that you can do, because before you could do all security events, common and minimal, but you couldn't do custom. And by the way, the definitions for these are in the documentation. So if you want to know exactly which events in this case, it will be there. But if you wanted to do custom, so this is one of those areas where you can do that. And I'm going to copy and paste because it's easier. But you could do something like this, where it's going to only collect the failed sign-ins for users. Or you could do something like this. Let's see. Or event ID equals 4624. So I could include failed signings and successful login. So I can construct up to 20 different expressions here, and then decide which are the ones that I am going to send to the Log Analytics workspace. I don't need to send every single event. I can pick and choose, and that's one, less noise for a security team, and two, it costs you less money. So it's very nice, very efficient. So I'm not going to say that, but I wanted to show you. Okay, so now, actually, before I jump into showing you the DCRs for other types of data sources, I'm actually going to use I'm going to show you two slides, just two slides. And I'm not even going to bring it in slide mode. I'm just going to share this really fast. And by the way, this deck will be shared with everyone, so I'm happy to share everything. So I just wanted to show you that there's different types of storage options. You do not, when I set up these connectors that I was just showing you, by default, they're going to go into these analytics type of storage, analytics tables. They're analytics log tables. That's what they're called by default. But I can also choose to bring in certain data into this basic type tables. So these are meant to be for noisy logs, like it says in here, verbose logs, like your firewall logs normally. And it's not going to be able to generate alerts, and the KQL that you can run on this is limited. So this is noisy stuff that you need for hunting or maybe for correlating as you're going through. And so this is just a lot less expensive. The estimated cost is a lot lower than this. And also, while I'm here, we have a calculator that is available to you. So on that aka.ms Sentinel links, there's a calculator there that you can download and use to estimate costs. And it's going to take into consideration analytics and basic logs too. And it's going to take into consideration archive logs too. So there's the other type of storage is archive. So once you ingest your data, it's either going to land on analytics or basic. And by the way, not all tables can be ingested as basic. So just check, like I said, it's meant to be for noisy logs or custom logs. I have partners that have taken some of like the syslog data, and they've used data collection rules to split the data from coming into analytics and some of it coming into basic. So they'll do that, and they'll have like like a custom version of that table that receives this, stays there in 8 days, and then it goes into archive. And I'll show you how to configure that in a minute. But I wanted to show you the various options. So archive is a very inexpensive level within the log analytics workspace. All three are this within the log analytics workspace. And then there's maximum retention for analytics logs. So 2 years, 8 days, like I said, for this one, and 7 years. And 7 years is like that magic number for compliance. So that's why you see that 7 there. So archive, compliance, auditing type data. The beauty of this one is that you can use that search feature to search, and then and I'll show search in a minute, and I'll explain it in a minute. But this is one that you can search and then rehydrate data if you need it to, or restore is the word that they use. But you still also have other types of storage. You have blob storage. So you have your regular old Azure blob storage that can be there for 99 years, that it's nice, all reliable. And you can use that for archiving, compliance, auditing as well. And you even have Data Explorer too. And some partners use a combination of these two, ADX and blob storage. Because ADS has some really nice features that I will show during the demo. So you can run queries across from Sentinel through ADX into blob storage too. So there's a lot. And I know that sometimes the pricing can get complex, but the idea is to give you options, to give your customers options, so that you don't necessarily need to pay for the most expensive one, the default one, but you have options, and be aware of those options. Okay, so search, I mentioned search. When you have analytics rule tables, and you have basic tables that I was telling you about. When the retention is reached, if you have set archiving, then it's going to go into archive automatically. And keep in mind, like it says here, 90 days for data retention is included. So normally you just keep it here for 90 days and then move it over here to data archive. And that way you pay a lot less. See, the data archive charge brings it down quite a bit. And so from here, you can still restore. So you can do a search. Let's say, like, I don't know, right now you're looking for data that was sent to archive from like a year ago, and you have it there for 2 years. And you can search for a specific IP. Maybe you're investigating a specific indicator of compromise. And so you're searching for that IP. You can search within whatever table you're searching for. And then if data is returned, then you can restore that data so that you can run additional KQL queries on it. But the beauty of it is that you're only restoring the data that you actually need. You're not like taking that whole entire table from, I don't know, January of last year and then bringing it back. You're actually just restoring the data that is relevant to you to bring it to do some additional KQL queries. So that's a nice feature about search. All right, so sorry for showing it in this way, but it's just easier to move back and forth. And move this here. All right, so now I'm going to show you the storage, how you do all this stuff that I was telling about. So let's minimize this again. I'm gonna go into settings. And by the way, there's a new, and I haven't actually switched it here. There's a new simplified pricing. I haven't switched it on this one, but I switched it on the other one. So you need, what it does is that it combines the costs that are associated with Sentinel and with Azure Monitor or the Log Analytics Workspace into one price. So it's simplified pricing. So like you see here, $2 per gig, $2.30 per gig. If I switch to this other tenant, which I switched already, I'm actually going to stay here. You see that is now combined. So this one is the new one. The other thing is, if you have See, now it's 430 instead of 2, and 230 is 430. This is my current tier. If I have customers that have a lot of data, you can save a lot of money by using commitment tiers. So between 100 gig per day to 5 terabytes per day, you can use commitment. You should use commitment tiers so you can save money. It'll actually recommend it to you too. When you come here, it'll tell you that, hey, this is, you should be saving money. This is also where you enable UEBA and Work Manager, which we'll use in a minute. And this is also where you enable auditing and health monitoring if you didn't do it automatically through that deployment that I was showing you earlier. So if you had to do that, might as well. While I'm here, I'll show you that. Okay, so now I wanted to show you how you set up the daily cap. If you didn't do it automatically, you would come here and you would set it here. If you're using it, I am not. If your data retention, so this is like the default data retention for your workspace. So this is where you would set it. I have 31, which is probably not ideal. It should be 90 because you don't pay for Sentinel for retention. And the other one, I do have 90, but not on this one. And you would set this one as the default. But however, you can change that per table. So not all the tables can have the same retention. So do I have any? See, like this one, for example, Azure activity here, I modified so that it's not using, I don't know, oh, it isn't using the default workspace settings for retention. So I can modify it here. And like I said, for analytics, you have up to 2 years. If I go above on total retention, which I can go up to 7 years because that's the maximum for archive. Let's say I go to 4 years here. So I have 90 days on a total retention period of 4 years. So it'll stay on analytics table, which is the interactive retention for those 90 days. And then after that, it'll move it to archive. When it moves it to archive, then I can do that, the search that I'm going to show you in a little bit. But this is where I would make those changes for that specific table. And so I can, even though I have a default one, I can still set the retention for different tables to different settings. All right, then I have some tables, and I'm going to show you one that I already have set up, where I can do transformations. Not every table supports transformations. There's a list, and again, I have that list in the links. I have that list on the links that I share with you, the AKA, not that one, Sentinel links. There's transformation. This is the library, but there's also a list, collection rules, tables. Oh, maybe I don't. Okay, I owe you that link then. But actually, while I'm talking here about the transformations, we have a Sentinel transformations library. So if you're having, because those data collection rules that you're using to bring in different, filtering out data, you can also do it for masking. So things like if you want to mask social security numbers, there's a library here that tells you how to do that. So don't go reinventing the wheel. This stuff is available for you. I put that link in the chat, in the links. But like I was showing you here, in this case, I have a transformation that is taking AWS CloudTrail, which in my case is like a super noisy one, but I can project away a specific column, or whatever I can get creative with in KQL, I can put it in here. I was just showing you some examples. I can extend, obviously this would be an additional, but I wanted to show you that, there's certain features that you can use. So you don't necessarily need to remove stuff. You can also add columns or make up columns based on other combination of, which is what I'm doing here. But that's the type of transformation using those data collection rules that you can use that is not necessarily associated with the agent, but it could be associated with those tables that support it. And the list is actually quite long. I just don't know it. It's in the documentation. All right, and then search. So let's go into search. I can never find that. Here it is. So I have, and actually I'm going to jump to the other tenant. Sorry for the jumping around, but I'm in the middle of moving tenants. So I have, and I can pick a table here, and let's just use security incident. And I have no idea what I'm going to be looking for, so I'm just going to run this one. And I'm going to show you how you kick off a search. Okay, so it tells, it runs this query, and it's going to run it for the last 24 hours. But let's say I just want to go to, I don't even know if I have data in this instance from this month, but let's just go like February 1, and it might not find anything through May, April 17, and I apply. And now I go here and I see this little search job mode, and I move this to search job. And so now it's actually going to go look into archive. So now before I was looking in here, actually, I'm going to turn it off so that we can run it. So you can actually see that there's no data here. There's no data. So now I turn it on, and then it's going to kick off a search job into archive. And then I get to name that table. And all those search tables, they're going to be added with the _RCH. So it'll be created with like, I'm just going to call it test 1 and run the search job. And it'll kick off and it'll run. It depends on how much data it has to scan, how long it actually takes. But it'll run that job for a while, and that's fine with me. I don't care. I'll have this when it's done, and I can take a look at the results. And if I wanted to restore the data, I could click on restore, and that data would then be, it would show up under here, which I don't have any results in here, so I can't restore them. But it would show up in here, and I could run, regular KQLs against that table that was restored. And if I'm done with it, then I just click on delete and delete it, and off it goes. But that's how search works in like 2 minutes. All right. I did mention that you had other options for storing data. So I'm gonna run over here because I don't have permissions on that one. Actually, I don't even know that I have permissions on this one. Oh, sorry. Yeah, here. I should have permissions on this one to run. You can run queries that are on ADX, and I'm actually going to just copy and paste so that you can see. I have like there's a ADX free that comes that you can use for testing purposes. That one is on the links as well. So that's what I'm using here. So cleverly named a favorite database, and I'm just using some sample data. So it's not like anything super secret or anything. I just wanted to show you that you can run queries across ADX and you use that data as well. ADX is less expensive, but the same KQL queries. However, what did I do? Wrong. Oh, access denied because I don't have permissions there. All right, let's do it from here. You have to have permissions. It should run from here. So ADX, as I was saying, it's less expensive, same KQL queries, but no UEVA, no visual investigation, and the performance is obviously, not quite as good as having it here, but it is an option. The other option is, I'm going to show it to you through an analytic rule, is the blob storage, and I happen to have an analytic rule that it's using. Actually, here it is. External data commands. So I'm going to show you. I was doing some testing where just expand this a little bit, and it's using geodata, which as you probably know, there's a new operator, so you don't need to do this anymore. But at the time, I was using data that was stored in blob storage, and I actually had to renew the SAS token, because if you notice, it's actually using a SAS token, so it's actually a pretty protected connection here, and so I can actually run queries against. I don't know that I have any. I don't have any. Yeah, it's not showing any data, but it is running this query across the blob storage, and so you can do the same thing. So even to generate analytic, to generate alerts or incidents, as you can see here. So blob storage is yet another option. And actually, and I'll show you an example. I have some that because I was using a SAS token here. So if it expires, your analytic rule is actually going to be automatically disabled. So I'm actually going to show you. So see, like in here, this one was actually disabled because the SAS token expired. But I think it's an interesting thing to show you, because when it's auto-disabled, it's going to be disabled, and it'll mark it with name auto-disabled. And it'll also tell you why it was disabled. So see, it was too many consecutive failures. It'll actually add it to the description. So this was my original description. And then it added this stuff here when it disabled it to tell me why it disabled it. The query was denied access to storage path. In my case, the SAS token expired. So that's why, see, this is not working. It's denied. But anyway, it's a good example to show you what happens when it gets disabled because it doesn't have access. You can also combine ADX and blob storage, like I was saying. There is some data that is free data. It's data at no cost. It's in the documentation. It's also in the list of links. And so these are the tables that are free data sources right here. Just keep that in mind. The other thing is that, and if you need more information on the simplified pricing, there's a whole blog that was shared recently that explains the simplified pricing. It also talks about the free trials, and it talks about besides the free data, you also get this benefit. The Microsoft 365 customers that have E5, A5, F5, they get a discount as well. It's up to, how much is it? I think it's 30, it's right here. 2,200 per month on a typical 3,500 seats. So you can save money. And the other one is Defender, for customers that have Defender for server speed 2. They get 500 MB per VM as well. So lots of free stuff or discounts in there, which is good. And actually, by the way, this workbook, there's a cost workbook, Sentinel cost workbook, that actually shows you the discounts. Actually, sorry, this is not a good tenant to use it on, to show you on, because I don't have that discount here, but this one does. And I'm still on the same. I need to be on this one. This is actually one of those workbooks that can show you across your customers too. You saved ones. So see how in here I have all these. So if I have access to all my customers, then I can actually see data for all those customers, regardless of where I'm logged in from, because it's just looking at me, the user. What do I have access to? What I wanted to show you is that you have, this actually shows you the Sentinel benefit for that discount for E5, A5, F5, G5. So it's a good way to visualize that. So watchlist, I think the best way that I can think about them is, if you're a database person, it's like a materialized view. That's the way that I look at them. They're not quite tables, but they're like equivalent of a view that you can actually keep data on. And actually, as you can see, some of the SOC process framework solution that I installed actually comes with watch list, like I was telling you earlier that I modified, I'll show you. I modified the contacts one to add my name in here. So in the same way, you can, modify some of those as well. And you can also create your own. So there's some templates, high value assets. It's a popular one, terminated employees, VIP users. And I'm going to show you how you actually use these. I have one for terminated employees, which I'm going to show you here. Update watch list. And it has these 3 users. These are the villains from Powerpuff, if you're not familiar with them. So these are my terminated employees. And the way that you can use that, you can use that in really many ways. As you can see that the SOC process framework uses it within workbooks, but I'm going to use it within an analytic rule, which is what we're going to cover next. Oh, actually, before I move out of watch list, besides the templates, you can also create new ones yourself, and that can be from like a CSV file, or it could be from storage as well. So if you want to point to a larger one that is already in storage, then you can use that as well to create them. Okay, so I have an analytic rule here. By the way, this message that you keep seeing here, contents gallery, content, it means that you're not going to be able to see those here unless you actually install them from Content Hub. So just wanted to clear that up. All right. So I have this, is it this one? I think it's this one. Yeah, there it is, watch list terminated. So I have this analytic rule that it's a silly rule, but it's a good rule to explain this scenario. And this one it's going to alert from if there's a successful login from an IP, and then there's a failure from a different IP for the same user, followed from one by the other. It's just a easy one for me to generate alerts for. And what I did here was I modified it so that it's going to pull data from terminated employees. And if there's a terminated employee, then it's going to increase the severity. So it's going, if the user principal, the UPN is in terminated watch list, then it's going to make it a high severity. And it's also going to change the alert name too, to say successful terminated watch list user logon from an IP, failure from a different IP. So that's one way that you can use them. You can basically, let's say you're watching for VIP users, your ELT, and you want to make sure that the severity of those incidents is higher because you need to respond to those because they have a higher blast radius. Then you can increase the severity for those automatically using something like watch list. And again, the same thing for the assets that have a high value as well. And while I'm here, since we're talking about analytic rules, this type of analytic rule is a schedule analytic rule. You can create these. A lot of them come out of the box with a lot of the Content Hub solutions. You're going to see that some Content Hub solutions come with like 50 different analytic rules. And also some analytic rules cover a wide variety of scenarios. Like I think there's one SAP analytic rules that has like 100 and something different scenarios within one rule. So and I mentioned this especially for those partners that are working on migrations from legacy SIEMs to Sentinel, because sometimes they're trying to find what was the equivalent in the legacy SIEM. And so make sure that you check your Content Hub solutions. So start with your data sources and then check your Content Hub solutions, because a lot of those rules may already exist. So don't go reinventing the wheel. There's a lot of resources there, and there's a lot of resources in our repository, which is linked in the list of Sentinel links that I share. So don't, look for that first. You're gonna get for typical schedule analytic rule, you're gonna get your name, description. You're gonna be able to set the severity. And you're going to be able to associate tactics and techniques. And you're going to be able to, like I showed earlier, one was disabled. You can enable and disable them. You can also, so as you see, the KQL query is the what determines what is actually going to generate an alert. And you can view the results if there's any. I don't know that I did. And this one I was testing earlier today. So you can see that some of these were generated, and there's going to be some incidents generated in there. So you can test your results to see while you're creating it, and then you can also do entity mapping. This is very important. So this is saying the various the output of this query, those certain columns, I want them to be mapped to the entities that Sentinel knows about. So in this case, the UPN that is extracted from here, I want that to be mapped to the account full name. The IP address is going to be an IP address in Sentinel. And the reason is, and you can have up to 10 of those per rule. The reason is these entities are the entities that are going to be showing in the incidents. And they're also used by our Fusion machine learning engine to be able to correlate alerts, because as Zach was explaining, Fusion can see, it's able to automatically correlate whether different alerts that might have happened triggered by different products completely are related to the same attack, to like a multi-stage attack. So this is very important. This and the tactics and techniques here is what that engine uses to be able to correlate them. So make sure you do your entity mapping. There's additional data that you can also map, just because it's useful information to your SOC team, especially in a case like this one where maybe you don't want to contact the end user directly. Maybe you want to contact, because it was a terminated user, you want to contact the manager. So the manager field, you can add that. And I'm getting that information from a different table here. Or is it here? I'm getting that information from, I think, identity. I don't know where I did it. Join user principal name department here. I'm getting it from here. So once I get that information, it's actually getting from identity info, which is on UVA table. But once I get that information, I can put it into this custom details, which is going to make it easier for my SOC analyst to be able to contact that person and whatever information you think is going to be useful. And then I can schedule these to run every however often that you need this to run. And this can be, and actually there's a range. So like if I set this to minutes, it's going to say no. For scheduled type rules, it can be between 5 minutes and 14 days. If you need less than 5 minutes, there's an NRT that Zach mentioned earlier. Those NRTs are near real time, and they are hard-coded to run every minute. So this is not a scheduled query rule is not the rule to use if you needed anything less than 5 minutes. And then you can determine how back. And I'm cheating in some of these cases because this is a demo instance, so I need to generate incidents. So that's why you see that sometimes I look a lot back than I should be looking. And then I can actually, this is a rather new feature that I can start running it automatically, or I can run at a very specific time. And then I can see, hey, maybe if it's generating more than 5, then I want to see an alert. If it's not more than 5, then I don't want to see an alert. Then you can set that up. You can also group them. And you can do suppression. This is mostly during testing purposes if you're doing that. And then under instance settings, I can choose to generate instance or not generate instance. And I can also choose to group the alerts. Like I said, in this case, I wanted to generate more incidents because I'm doing testing in a demo instance, but you don't need to. you can group them together to make it easier for your analyst to work on these. And it's up to 150. You're actually going to see one that I generated that has 150 because I ran some agents. I run the attack IQ agent on some of the servers, and so it correlated them all into a fusion incident, and so it made it to the max of 150. And then I can also determine how I'm grouping them, how I'm grouping those alerts. And this is the default one, which is the recommended one, is grouping alerts into a single incident for if all the entities match. But you can also choose like which entities, if the account matches, or the IP, so the first IP and the second IP matches, or whatever the other ones that I was did the entity mapping. And you can also do it by the custom details too, which is kind of cool. All right, so I'm not using this, so I'm going to disable that. And then automation. And I'm going to spend a lot more time in automation to the last hour here. But I still want to show you that you can run automation or trigger playbooks, or actually it doesn't need to be just a playbook. As you can see here, I have an automation rule. I'm actually going to look at this one first so you can see it. This one doesn't even run a playbook. All it does is actually runs an automation rule when the incident is created. So, and by the way, I can trigger that when the incident is updated as well, or when an alert is created, because an incident might have 15 different alerts. So I can, and it'll continue to add alerts to it if it finds them to be related to the same based on the settings that you just configured. But in this case, I have specific conditions. So for this specific analytic rule, which is why this is grayed out because it's for this one, and also if the account name equals this user, and if the IP address equals this IP, then I'm going to add a tag. There are certain actions, add tag, add task, which I'll explain what tasks are in a minute, assign owner, change severity, change status. Those I don't need a playbook for. But if it's anything else besides what we have here so far, and I realize we keep adding more here, which is good, less money to pay for playbooks. But if it's not something that is here, then you can just run a playbook too. And I can also set a rule expiration. As you can see here, I did set a rule expiration on this one that is only going to add that tag for a certain amount of time. When I close it, if I chose to change the status to closed, I can also select classification. This goes by, any kind of closure, but in this case, I'm doing it through automation. So if I determine that is some team is doing testing, and so I'm just going to ignore these for a certain amount of time, then I can say that that's a suspicious, but it is expected. So it's a benign positive. So and these types of actions that you can do automatically, and you can create the automation rule from here. You can create it from the automation portal, or you can create it also from the incidents portal, or not portal, blade, I should say. And I'll show you why that might be useful, because like this one I created from the incidents blade. So I just picked on an incident, and so it matched all these conditions automatically. Of course, I can add more conditions, but it just makes it easier to determine what the values are for the conditions that I'm trying to meet. So let's see. I'm going to close this one and move on to the next type of, the NRTs are very, very similar. And I think I have a few NRTs enabled. You're going to set the rule logic, and notice that you can't set the timing on it because they're hard-coded to run every minute. But you can still do automation, and you can still do grouping per incident. The Microsoft incident creation rule, this one's based on Microsoft services, so security services. So you have, let's say I have Defender for IoT, and I want to create incidents, maybe custom severities. Only I want to create incidents only for the highs and the mediums. So I can select highs and mediums and then create a rule that does just that. Or specific alerts only. Or maybe specific alerts are, I want to exclude specific alerts too. So again, I can also do automation for those as well. But notice there's no KQL here because this is just based on the alerts that are coming from the various Microsoft security services. So that's the main difference there. And the other one, okay, so those three you can create from here. There are additional rules, rule type. Actually, it's gonna show Fusion. I'll show Fusion a little bit later. The ML behavior one is proprietary, so you can't see the internal logic for them. Actually, let's pull up one of those so you can see them. Or am I using any? I'm not using any. See if rule type ML behavior. So you can see this create rule, and there's not much to it. It's just this, and if you want automated response, and that's it. And there's not a lot that you can set because they're proprietary. But these are anomalous RDP and anomalous SSH login detected. What was the other type? What's the other type? Rule type. I will cover threat intelligence together in a little bit. Okay, and that covers all of these. So while I'm here, I do want to cover anomalies. So anomalies are kind of part of UEBA, which is the next topic that I'm going to cover. So I want to cover anomalies from here first. So anomalies by themselves, they're not going to be a super strong signal, but when combined with other alerts and additional anomalies too, they can become much stronger. So you're going to see in the NTT, they do show in the NTT timeline. So they're also useful for investigations as well. But on their own, they're not going to create an incident. They can be tuned. So like, but these ones can't be tuned. So you would have to create a custom one. So this, you can enable and disable one. You can also change the mode. So this is like when your production is like regular production, it would just generate one. Flighting mode would be like testing or you're staging. So that's where you would, and normally you would duplicate this one and then set the new one to flighting mode so that you can test it and then switch one to production because it can only be one production at a time. And in here you can't change the thresholds because they are in production, but you can do it for the flighting one. And you can also submit feedback on them. So if there's any information that you want to provide in a specific one, please feel free. And like I said, this team loves feedback. So please do that. Actually, I have one in flighting mode, which all I did was I came here, duplicated one, and I create this customized one. So you can see that for that one, I can adjust the thresholds and make some more changes to it and maybe test it out. So that is a little bit about the anomalies, and I'm going to show them to you. And by the way, they're not just like Azure stuff. There's Palo Alto anomalies. There's AWS ones. There's a whole combination of them. So they're not all related to. See, like this one's Palo Alto, this one's AWS, and this one's AWS. So they're not just Azure or Microsoft specific. Some of them have a training period. I think there's one for excessive downloads. Maybe not here. There are some that have like maybe I don't know what the name is, but some of them have a learning period of like 14 days in order for it to be able to start triggering. All right. So they will show where in the entity timeline in UBA. So let's go to UBA which is entity behavior blade. When you first come here, there's going to be like a little slider. if you haven't enabled it, I showed you earlier that you can enable it from settings, but you can also enable it from here. And so this little slider would be there, and you would just change it, and then you enable the sources that you want to enable. And really, somebody, I think I saw a question in the chat where it said, why not enable by default? Mostly compliance. The answer is really compliance. They want somebody to say, yep, I do authorize this data to come into to the workspace. Notice that you have to have global admin or security administrator to be able to do that. So it's making sure that you have the permissions that you need to be able to do that. I'm going to expand this a little bit so we can actually see more data. And you see all sorts of entities are all sorts of entities. It could be accounts, could be host, IPs, IoT devices, which I have on the other tenant, but not on this one, and Azure resources. And I guess I expanded a little too much because I see taking a little bit of time. You can actually, as I was showing you there, that you can enable certain types of data. If you want to estimate the amount of data that is going to be generated doing UEBA, it'll be like 7 to 10% of the data. So if you have like signing logs, you calculate 7 to 10% of the whatever signing logs data, that's what is going to be additional generated data for UEBA. That's an estimate. You can customize the type of the actual activities that show up in the timeline. And there's these templates that are provided out of the box. A lot of this stuff is like, pretty obvious stuff, like user has created an account, deleted an account, especially like your service accounts, they show up here. Local privilege group, user added a security group, things along those lines that you probably want to be able to show in the timeline that are useful to a SOC analyst. Account was added to domain admins group. Things like that are going to show up here. I have enabled all of them. You don't have to, all the templates, but you can also create your own. So you can, if you have tables that are that you're bringing in data, it's just writing the KQL query, and then you'll add that activity to the timeline. And I keep referring to the timeline, so I am going to show you what that timeline looks like. So I'm going to start with, let's see, I'll start with this one. Actually, it's the same one, say this one. So this is a host. This is a AZDC is my Azure data domain controller, which I use for Defender for identity testing. So, and actually I need to expand this because I don't have any alerts recent. But this is the timeline that I was telling you about. So if I wanted to see additional entries in this, activities in this timeline, then I could modify those so that I can see them as well. So if I have like, well, not in the case of a server, but like in the case of an account, if I have Okta data coming into Sentinel, then I probably want to see that in my timeline too. So I would add a query from my Okta table so that it would show here. There's quite a bit of information that is shared in here. I find this very useful, especially for like if anybody that has worked in a SOC team before, they typically don't have access to everything. Sometimes IT will block access to, especially like account data, directory data. So they might not be able to see like when a user reset their password directly from there. So some of that information is actually going to show in here. And I realize I'm showing you a server, but let me jump in to, just wanted to show you some of the information that it would show for a server, like Defender antivirus events, some process execution information, sign-in activity into the server too. So these are insights that are coming from UEBA. Additionally, any kind of information that is available on the VM, since in my case it's an Azure VM, there's a little bit more information here. But let's pick this user, which I know is the user that I was testing with earlier. And I'm going to expand this here to like 7 days. So I can see that first that the users enable. I can see that they haven't been deleted. They're a member, they're not a guest. If it was a guest, I would be able to see it. If they're part of a watch list, which I actually are, I don't know why it's not showing here, but Fuzzy Lumpkins is part of a watch list. It might show over here. And the organization, the department, the manager, the role, all that information is showing here. I also show the alerts, and these are the alerts that are that I was telling you that I was testing with. So they're showing here. Also notice there's anomalies showing here. Remember I told you that anomalies from UEBA would show here too. So these are not generating an alert, but if there's any kind of anomaly that I want to see, I would be able to see it here as well. And I can actually, in the timeline, I can see filter by security alerts, bookmarks, activities, and anomalies. So I could, this one, UEBA anomalous password reset. That's something that I think would be useful. This is probably the part that I think is super useful for SOC analysts. Whether the user changed the password, they use self-service. They updated the user with, this is a strong authentication, so they added an MFA factor here. I can see that information. If I want to see all the activity, I could just click on this, and I can actually see the query. If I want to modify this query and continue to investigate from here, I can do that as well. But this is information that I think is super useful to a SOC analyst. I can also see a little bit more actions on the account. A lot of that added user, updated user. I see some anomalies. I don't even know what these anomalies are, so I'm going to click on this. What is it that is showing here? And it's showing, okay, evidence, activity insights. Don't know why this anomaly is. Oh, okay, it's just activity log on sign in. Okay, I don't know why it's showing. I probably enabled way too many things, so it's showing all of them. Oh, and I do see the watch list, that it is part of a watch list that is user is terminated. So it's part of that watch list, so it's actually showing me that information in here. I'm going to pick another user. This user actually has some action. I'm going to expand this a little bit too, because I don't know when I did testing. But Barbie, I've been doing some testing with Barbie, and so it should show some interesting information. See, I see some of the alerts are MFA rejected by user. I see anonymous IP address, and it should show also a Tor IP, because that's what I was doing. But in here, it actually shows some of the very similar information that you saw for the other user. But I show peers, so I see what some of the other peers are to this user. And I also see mail items accessed. So expected count would have been this amount, where the actual was this. So there's some kind of anomalous high office operation count here. And I show this one because this one has been on the news quite a bit. So this is something that could probably be very useful to a SOC analyst. Also, resources access. They downloaded files from many IP addresses, and then I can dig in here as well. And there's lots of there's some threat indicators related to the user, and also the watch list that this user is actually tagged as VIP. So this is probably a compromised. Like I said, I was doing testing with this one, but if I didn't know any better, I would say that's a compromised user for sure. So this is the type of information that you get from UEBA. And it's not just user, it's not just, and I want to show you that briefly, because I do have in here, where I can never go to the right one here, entity behavior. So let's do this. I did some testing with Defender for IoT, so we should see some IoT devices here too show up. Yeah, so we can see some IoT devices also in here. If you have IoT devices, they would also show up here, and you'll be able to see additional information about them, even the vendor. And sometimes it shows a little, depending on the device itself, it might actually show additional information, like the where they're actually at. So this one doesn't have that information, but if you have labeled some of that, it would show up in here as well. Okay, moving on. We are going to threat intelligence now. So we have, okay, so first of all the threat intelligence is actually going to show up in here, in this, all the threat intelligence that you're ingesting into your workspace is going to show up in here. So you can, as you can see, I have different data sources for my TI, and I can see the, I can sort it by that. I can also just create new ones manually. So I can come in here and if I have an IP address, I can put the value in here. I can tag it. I can put the level of confidence that I have in there. And I can even put a certain validity in here, and I can just create it manually. Obviously, that's a little bit time consuming. So the best way to do that would be through the connectors, and there's a few of them. So I think I'm going to show them to you from here, from Content Hub, because it shows all of them at the same time. Threat intelligence. This one. Manage. Okay. So I have all these types of connectors. We have the threat intelligence taxi connect. Actually, I'm going to search on, okay, let's just go here. I'll go with this one first. Threat intelligence taxi connector. If you have taxi, this is the way to go. It's just the easier way to do it. And you could just add the information, the API URL, the collection, whatever user you're using, and then the password. And then you can set it to ingest once a minute, once an hour, once a day, however it works. And so you can see in here that I have this one. Actually, this one used to be free, but it's no longer available for free. So I'm sorry about that. And let's see what other, since I'm here, threat intelligence, I want to show you the other ones. The threat intelligence, Defender Threat Intelligence Preview is really the one that you should be using. This is the replacement to the TIP Threat Intelligence Platform. This is preview for many, I think even over a year, and now it's being deprecated. The reason is this one was required permissions at tenant level, which is, so if you had like 5 different workspaces within that tenant, whenever you grant the permissions, it would grant it to all of them. Whereas this one is just at the workspace level permission. So it's much better for security purposes. Super easy to connect and disconnect. And everyone really should be connecting this one. And it's Defender for, this is actually the MDTI one that is bringing in data from MDTI. This is actually, where's the API one? This one's the, sorry, I mixed them up. This is the one that is the replacement for this one. So this one would actually bring in data, and you still need to create an Azure Active Directory register an application, but the permissions would be at the workspace level. So this is how you would configure this one. And again, this would work if you're using Taxi, go with the Taxi connector. If you're not using Taxi, then go with this one, because it's just basically you're generating a user and a password that has permissions to write into that threat intelligence table, because all the TI data ends up in that threat intelligence table. So those are the various different levels or options that you have to ingest. When you ingest, so you're going to see it through here, but you're also going to be able to query that table directly. So let's see. That's threat intelligence indicator table is where it all ends up at. I don't even know if I have something from the, yes, I do. I have some table, some IOC, but this is the table where they all end up at. Analytics rules that use this table are, you can create your own, but there's a lot of them that are going to be created for you when you install those solutions. So like if I go back to the threat intelligence, this one, if you notice, it has 38 analytic rules. Actually, I'm going to show them to you. So you can see it comes with the connectors, but it also comes with this TI map. All of these analytic rules, anything that says TI map is going to read from that table, from all of your threat intelligence that you have ingested into your workspace. Anything that you have imported that is TI, it would go against that. And there's also some hunting queries that are available that come out of the box. Again, you can create your own. And there's a threat intelligence workbook too, which is actually very nice. I don't know why I have two. I have two templates, this one. And it tells you, it just shows you information about the indicators so that you have imported. And actually there's a corner here that I always point out. If you've heard me before, you've heard me say this before. The uniqueness of the threat intelligence sources is pointed out here too. So it's a good way to tell if you're paying for the same type of data to two different vendors. So that's a little bit about threat intelligence. Let's see, did I forget anything? Sorry, I'm checking through my notes. Oh, yes, I did. Okay, there is another type of threat intelligence, a threat intelligence that you do not have to import into your workspace. There's this this rule here. It's called Microsoft Threat Intelligence. What is it called? Microsoft Threat Intelligence Analytics. Yeah, it's you see how you don't do much but enable it or disable it. This rule is like it says in here, it generates an alert from our threat intelligence data, and if it matches on your event log. So this is actually comparing Microsoft IOCs with the event logs, and that could be syslog, Ceph, or Windows DNS. And it used to be that it was only domain indicators. They added IP indicators as well. And then earlier this year, they also added MDTI, which used to be Risk IQ. That was our acquisition. So there's some MDTI, premium TI for matching as well. And there's no license needed for this, in fact. And by the way, even the connector, the MDTI connector that I showed you earlier, you don't need a license to be able to do that. It's not the same level of data that you're going to get if you have a license, but you do get some threat intelligence data if you connect it. So technically, everyone should be connecting that data source and start looking at the threat intelligence that is coming in. All right. Oh, they actually have a second solution in the Content Hub for threat intelligence. Actually, I think I have to look for the MDTI for this one. This one? Yes, this one. So this one actually has 4 playbooks. If you're familiar with the Risk IQ Illuminate solution, which I actually wrote a blog on previously, this is the replacement for that solution. So this is Risk IQ's now renamed MDTI. And so if you have a license for MDTI and you have an API license for MDTI, then you can use these playbooks to enrich, and these are just to enrich incident information into Sentinel. So they do very much the same type of work that the Illuminate one used to do, where it would go, it would just go out to Risk IQ, in this case, MDTI, which is just the same but renamed. It grabs information on the host and the IPs. Actually, I'm going to show you. Let's show you the Intel reputation one so you can actually see this. This one, oh, I haven't created it here. It's fine. Oh, it's actually gonna, oh, let me show you on one where I've actually created it. Because I didn't create it in this instance. MDTI. In Intel reputation. I just want to show you the playbook so you can see what it does. See, it goes out to, it gets information on the host and the IPs. It goes out to get the reputation for the host. And then if it finds any information on it, it'll add a comment into the incident about the reputation of that, in this case, host, or in this case, IP. But that's what it does. And I'll get into automation at the in about an hour. That's what I'm estimating, that I just need to cover a few other things, and I'll get really into the automation. I just want to cover everything first. Okay. Oh, by the way, MDTI has a trial. Actually, I'm going to put this, I'm going to just paste this into the chat so that you can have it if you need it. There's a trial. I think it's a 90-day trial, so it's not a short trial. It's pretty nice. So give it a try. MDTI for both the premium license and for the API license trial. And of course, you know, the last part of it is if you have Defender 365, you can access the threat intelligence information that is available to our customers from here. So, and even if it's not affecting your tenant, actually there's an area once it loads. I don't know why it's taking this long, but once it loads, there's an area that shows you the ones that are affecting your tenant and the ones right here. High impact threats, threat most active affecting your organization, but also the latest threats, which are here. And what I like about this is, I've been doing a lot of testing with Mimikat, so that's why you see that one probably at the top. But if you do, even if you want to check out if something is being compromised, or you just want to run some tests on it, a lot of times, first of all, the analyst report is super useful, I think, but also it'll give you and some of them, it'll actually give you some KQL queries to run directly to find out information about it. Let me see, Mustard, Tempest. Of course, none of these do, but a lot of times they're available here. Okay, just wanted to point that out, that you can find more information to the security.microsoft.com threat intelligence blade as well. Let's see. Okay, so now we're moving to repositories and workspace manager. I do need a slide to show this. Sorry, just gonna use it this way so it's faster. So this is a question that we get a ton on how to push all this content, all these workbooks, all these analytic rules in watch lists, and you name it. I need to push it from that MSSP tenant into my customer's tenant. And so there's really two options. So actually, there's really more options, but the two main options that I'm going to cover today are Sentinel repositories and Workspace Manager. Sentinel repositories, it's a way that you can set up a repository that can either be Azure DevOps or GitHub, and then you can configure this so that any artifact that you create, any of these artifacts that you create in this repository, then get automatically pushed to the workspaces where you have created a connection. So this is really nice and very super useful to, especially to MSSPs that are trying to make sure that they have the same content on all of their customers. Then there's, and I'm going to demo this in a minute. And then there's this other option, which is Workspace Manager. So this is a little bit of a newer feature. These two can work together. So just keep that in mind, and really should work together in some cases. This is a tool that is available within Sentinel, and I'll show you how to enable it. And you typically designate a main workspace as that MSSP. I think they have another name for it. I don't know what but it's like the main workspace, and then the child ones, right? The parent and the child, and the children. And then and then you can push content from that you have here, you can push it to these workspaces. And again, I will show you this in the demo. I just wanted to explain to you the concept. That one currently supports this types of content: analytic rules, automation rules, excluding playbooks. It doesn't support playbooks right now because of parameterization features that are not there yet. But like I said, it's very new. So I'm hoping that in the future, these things, additional types of artifacts will be supported. Parsers, safe searcher functions, hunting and live stream queries, and workbooks, they're all supported right now. You can also have like one workspace that is getting content from two different parents as well. And you can have grandparents. In fact, I actually have this configuration in place where I have one that pushes to this one pushes to other ones. And so I have sort of a similar configuration here done, but you can, there's the sky's the limit with this, and I expect more features to be added to this feature as we go. So for MSSPs, I think this is a great option. Those are not the only options. There's you can create your own scripts using PowerShell or the API. There's a Terraform provider, which I actually wrote the name here, Azure RM provider. It's also available. So if you're using that, you can continue to use that. So those are not the only options, but I'm going to demo these two. Okay, just here. All right. So first of all, you would have to have a connection, or is that what it's called? A connection? Yeah, I think it's called a connection. Add new connection, yeah, deployment connection. So you can have a connection to your repository created. And like I said, it supports both GitHub and Azure DevOps. And as long as you can authorize, that's really the key. If you can authorize to that repository, you can connect it. So it doesn't have to be a public repository. It can be a private repository. And as you see here, this one's actually a private repository. And I'm going to, this one, I enabled it for all of them, but if you don't want to configure all the content types, then you don't have to. Actually, I'm going to log in here and I'm going to push some content, and then I'm going to show it to you because it takes like a minute or two to run. So I'm going to take this one. Do I have new service principal? I don't. Okay, I'm going to put this one here. And new service principal. Commit. And now that it's running, I'll just let it run. So actually, I can actually track the running here, so I can see. And by the way, you see two because I actually have this repository connected to two different workspaces. The two workspaces that I've been sharing throughout the demo, both of them have it. And so you actually, and if I click on one of these, you can actually watch it as it's actually running the process. But I wanted to show you that you can actually, when you configure this, you can actually modify, I'm going back to actions. You can actually modify the how it deploys. So this is when you configure the connection, it creates this file automatically, and you can configure it. So like if I wanted certain path to only push information from there, I could do that. So there's configuration that you can do to customize how and when it actually pushes and what type of content it pushes or prioritizes to the workspaces that you have connected. So you can do those configurations after you deploy it. And the other thing is in this case, this test that I'm running, I'm actually pushing an analytic rule, which I named it like this just so that I can find it. But keep in mind that whatever configuration you have in here, it's what is going to get pushed. So And I say that because especially the question is like, so do you just push them disable and then enable them? It's up to you. You can send them enabled already and they'll just be ready to go. So whatever configuration you have in here, it's what is going to get pushed to your customer's workspace, and that's how the analytic rule, or I'm using an analytic rule, but you can use all the various different artifacts that you have to push that. Actually, I can see that one of them finished. Which one's this one? I can't remember which one's this one. Oh, Sentinel. Okay, so this one finished already. So I should be able to go here and go look for that analytic rule. And here, a favor. What can I start? Refresh. Oh, if I remove it. Okay, so this is the one right here, 209. This is the one that just got pushed. And I can actually see that it got the sources repositories and it was pushed at 209. And I actually, when I edited, and you might have noted this earlier when I was showing you a rule, it actually warns me. This rule is synced with an external repository. Any changes will be overwritten by the next sync. So it doesn't prevent you from modifying it, but it does warn you that it will be overwritten on the next sync. So this is one way that you can push analytic rules to your customers. I think the other one should be done by now too. Yeah. Okay. So if there's any issues, you can see that and you can monitor how that goes. So that's repositories. And then the other option is Workspace Manager. So in the case of Workspace Manager, I can add, and I don't have any more workspaces because I've added the most, but I can add workspaces that I have permissions to. So remember how at the beginning I did the setup with Azure Lighthouse? If I didn't have permissions set up with Azure Lighthouse, I would not be able to do this. So it depends wholly on Azure Lighthouse being set up in there before I can add those workspaces. So I can, so just to be clear, so I have these workspaces here, not because they're just magic, they just magically appear here, but because Azure Lighthouse was configured. So those are the ones that I'm doing. And then I have three groups. The idea with the groups is kind of like as you see them named here. This one just was my original one, so I just named my favorite customers. But the idea is you're going to have different customers that have different requirements. You're going to have customers that have HIPAA requirements. So maybe they have rules that are different and that need to trigger at different times. However they're configured, they're different. So they have different content. You'll have manufacturing companies or maybe pharmaceuticals that are watching, I don't know, temperature things. And so they have different rules that are going to trigger. So you can have them grouped separately. However, if you see that I only have 2 workspaces, but they can be members of one or more groups. They don't need to be necessarily part exclusively of one group. They can be parts of different groups. And so what I can do is, and I have it set up very, very, very simple. I only have one workspace here, and I only have one one rule here, but I can add more content. Okay, so I have all sorts of content. I have schedule rules, I have NRTs, all those that I showed you earlier that I could have. I could have some Microsoft security rules pushed that way, some functions, some safe search, a whole bunch of safe searches. I think I have workbooks here too. Nope. Okay. Automation rules and workbooks. So whatever I want to configure to go to that to those group of customers, I can select in here, put them in here, and so every time and then I create that group, and I'm gonna exit out of here. But all I have to do is just click on publish content, and then it's gonna start pushing any content. And in my case, there's no new content, so it just takes a few minutes. But then those customers are going to be able to see that new analytic rule. I don't have any new but the in my case, what is it that I have here? Let me check again. I have this one and this workspace. Okay, so let me log into that workspace, which is here, and go check it out and see how it shows up. And I have some analytic rule called LampRat. And this is the one that came over. Actually, I pushed this one yesterday. So that's what, actually, no, I pushed it again, 214. So I did push it again. So if there were any updates to it done previously, it just pushed it just now again, 824, 214. So that's, you again, right now, you cannot prevent them from modifying this, but you can override it. I think this is, this is, like I said, a rather new, it's still in preview feature. So it might be something that will, be enhanced in the future. And actually, I fully expect this to be enhanced in the future. Oh, I did forget to tell you, how do you enable this one to be the MSSP one? So I will tell you that. You go through settings, and you might have seen that earlier. There's this workspace manager configuration. So this is where you say, make this workspace a central workspace. So this is it's telling you, make this workspace an MSSP workspace instead of a customer one or parent one. I prefer the word parent because it could be parent, grandparent, or whatever. And in fact, I have some, like I said, I have a configuration where this one's a parent, but another one that is a child is also a parent. So I can push it down. So it's a very creative configuration that you can have in this. But this is where you enable it. And when you enable this, that's where you start to get this blade here so that you can start doing the configuration. So that was the piece that I forgot previously. Okay, so right. I think, let me see. Is there any, I'm going to stop here for 1 minute and see if there's any questions that haven't been answered. Because I know that some of this stuff is rather new.
Angelica, there is one question from Norm a little bit earlier, and he is asking, do your parsers use PCRE, Perl compatible regular expression?
I'm not sure. I can find out, but I'm not sure on that. Okay, I'll take that as to find out.
Got it.
All right, thanks, Zach.
Yeah, there's one other question too. I believe it's from 1107, and it's any changes, can any changes be applied in Workspace Manager? And they use an example such as in DevOps, they use 4i principle for changes to deploy content. You see that question? It's from 1107.
Oh, from earlier. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Well.
Oh, sorry, 1107. Sorry, I mean just about, that's my time, Angelica. Apologies.
Okay.
Just about 10 minutes ago.
Oh, okay. Any change policies can be applied in Workspace Manager. Not any change policies. It's right now it's strict to these content. Let's see, where is it? For now, it's these types of content. And then, like in DevOps, we use 4i principle for changes to develop content. Similar options available in the manager. Are we going back west into cowboy country? Keep in mind that this is in preview. So this is a very new feature. And so there's a lot more that's coming to this feature. Honestly, what I would say, highly recommend is you join the CCP. If you're not part of the CCP, I'm actually going to put it's aka.ms join CCP. And this is part of the Microsoft community, what is it called? Customer Connection Program. And so this allows you to be part of our previews. And there's always, Sentinel always has a lot of previews. Workspace Manager has some private previews. So I highly suggest that you join that so that you can be, one, part of it, and two, you can provide feedback on what you want to see in Workspace Manager. Now is the time to do it. So highly, highly recommend that you do that. Okay, all right. Thank you for the questions. Okay, so I'm going to continue to move forward. All right, so let's see how much time I have. All right, I have enough time. All right, let's see. Let's go into incident investigations, which is what I'm going to spend the majority of the time from here on out, because we're going to do into automation and response here. So I think Zach did a great job going over this this area here and how, you know, the incidents bring in a lot of information. But there was one type of incident that I wanted to show, which are the fusion incidents. So in my case, I'll have one here. I think this one. Okay, this is the fusion incident. You can get more information about fusion here. So this is one of those incidents where we didn't create this. This is the machine learning algorithm that is developed by Microsoft. That is, of course, I broke something. Log in again. What did I do? I broke it. Okay. Let me log in again. I've been switching back and forth, so probably. Okay. Let's try this again. And here. 7 days. This one. There we go. Back in. Just stay in. This is fusion is the type of incident that is determined automatically by the system, and it'll actually automatically say, hey, these, based on the entity mapping, based on the MITRE tactics and techniques, these incidents look like they are related to one another. And you can see this incident, in this case, it actually started at 1326 on August 21st, and it went all the way to 1905. This is me, by the way, attacking this server, so I know. I know that this was done actually on purpose. Actually, I did want to point out something information that is even this informational ones. See, like this one, this application. I'll click on this alert. Shimming malware was actually prevented. It's an informational alert by itself. It wouldn't generate an incident, but unless it's low, medium, or above, it's not going to generate an incident. But it noticed that it was related to all these other ones, so it actually added it as part of that incident. So you can have all the information in here. You can click on investigate to see, I can visualize. And this one, I went a little crazy attacking this servers. So you can see I went to attack this server, which is actually a resource also on Azure, but you can see all the various different files. And also from here, you can, especially in the case of malware, where is it? You can actually take action and add the T to TI. I think this was one of the questions that I saw earlier, where you can actually, where can you add the TI from? You're going to see a lot of these available, and one of those areas is here. So if you, this should be added as an IOC, you can add it directly from here. You can also run playbooks directly from here on that specific entity, which is another thing that I'm going to show in a little bit. The other item that I wanted to point out from here is that there's configuration that you can do for Fusion as to what it includes and what it doesn't include. I'm going to leave that open for a minute. I'm going to do that from here. It's actually under analytics rules. And there's, if I go to filter, and I go for the rule type fusion, then I can actually modify how that's, actually, before I click on this, I want to show you. This is a really good description of what fusion does. And it scenario-based fusion detection is 122. It's been 122 for a while, so it's probably more by now. It takes into consideration all of these, plus, like I was telling you earlier, the schedule analytic rules that have tactics and that also have entity mapping information. So you don't have to have them all, but the more that you have, the better that is going to be. Okay, and so you can actually configure this to exclude some of them. So you can, like if you wanted to exclude anomalies, you could just exclude them. If you wanted to, like only, I don't know, maybe for IoT, I only want to include the highs and mediums, ignore the lows and informational, then you can do that too. And you can also exclude certain patterns. There are certain patterns that are going to show up through, it actually shows up through the incident itself, and you can click on exclusion and then it'll generate one here. So you can do that. You can also do automation for fusion incidents. So if you wanted to run some specific playbook based on a fusion incident, maybe tag it, or I don't know, or maybe, I don't know, notify you whenever there's one of those to email you directly. You can do that for those too. So that's a little bit on fusion. Okay, back to the incident. Zach showed you the activity log, which I'm actually going to spend a little bit of time in a limit, but there's also tasks. This was a feature that was added relatively recent. It's still in preview, but these are, you can actually have a set of tasks, and I have some playbooks that are going to generate some tasks in a little bit. So you can basically decide that maybe for every fusion incident, my SOC analysts are going to follow steps 1 through 7. And so I would put step 1 here and then put the description of it, maybe some links to external information, and then, add step 2 and do the same thing, with my links and whatever. And so as and I can do this through playbooks, which I'm going to show you soon. As your SOC analysts go through this, they're going to be able to go and mark the steps as done, which you can actually see here. See how 1 of 2 completed. So as they go along completing it, you can actually see the progress here too. So that's incident tasks. That's another feature that was added recently. The other thing, activity logs, similar incidents is going to show here in the bottom. These are incidents that have been determined to be similar. Actually, and I think it tells you, yeah, there you go. So they're calculated looking back 14 days, and it's sorted by similarity. And it's going to be based on, it's not just similar entities. Actually, I want to see. No. Okay. So it could be similar incidents. It could be a similar alert, analytic rule. It could be, a variety of reasons why it's similar. But those are going to be listed here. Most of the time, as you can see, I don't really close them, but some of them I do close. But especially the closed ones, they become very useful to your SOC analyst to see, hey, what was done previously on this incident? And so I can go check out that incident that is similar, that was closed, and see what ended up being the issue. And I can, I don't know, maybe get some ideas. And I actually use this in one of my playbooks that I will share with you soon. Let's see. Investigate multi-state. Okay, I just showed you that. Oh, the other thing that I wanted to show you, see how this one has information that is actually coming from Defender for Cloud, and I see that it is showing Azure Defender here, but it's Defender for Cloud now. But you can go to that alert directly from here. And it just makes it easier. Actually, in this case, this one actually has information because it is from Defender for Servers, which includes a Defender for Endpoint license. And I can actually go even further into Defender 365 and investigate this incident directly from the security.microsoft.com. So, and those, I like the links because you don't have to just go search over there. It'll just provide it for you. And this is the Fusion one, but let's see, like this one, for example, okay, that's Defender for Cloud. Let me find one that is just Defender 365 or Defender for Endpoint, one of the two. So this one, okay. So in this case, this is a ransomware incident. And see, I get the link to investigating Defender for Endpoint directly from here. So if, again, these connectors are bidirectional. So if I happen to, work through this was a Mimikatz theft tool that ran on a server, which I did this on purpose. So this, if I close it here on Defender 365, then it'll be automatically closed on Sentinel as well. So there's a lot of that, those links going back and forth to make it easier to the analyst to troubleshoot. And there's some data, like especially in the Defender for Defender 365 connector. I'm going to show you that. I still have time. On this connector, there's some data that is optional. You don't need to bring it over to Sentinel. I am bringing it over to Sentinel, but you don't need to. So if you choose not to or the customer chooses not to because of cost, and you want to run some KQL queries against these tables that are only on Defender 365, then your team can just click on that and then come here and run the KQL queries, the hunting queries directly in here. So you don't have to move the data. So anyway, just making little notes here and there as I go. Let's see. Oh, I think I covered that in there. The workbooks. Oh, actually, Zach already mentioned the workbooks that are these workbooks that are available to you in here. Security efficiency workbook. There's some that are available from the analytics, like the health one. They're very, very useful. But besides those, specifically for MSSPs, there's one called Sentinel Central. Where is it? There we go. This one, it used to be available through Content. I couldn't find it, but it is still in the repository, which is how I installed it here yesterday. So this one is great because it actually helps you visualize your incidents. And again, these are all, I can look across my subscriptions, across my workspace, and I can get a really good idea of the incidents that even the location by region. Some partners like to see this because they'll pin this to like a dashboard, because you can take this report and then pin it to a dashboard and then make it available to other people to access, so they don't need to have access to Sentinel to be able to see that. But you can have, let's see, what am I looking? Oh, hunting, incident overview, hunting, query packs, safe searches, and retention tool information that you can see here. These are really great and useful, especially this one has information, so you can actually narrow it down to see some, let's see here. You can see mean time to triage, mean time to closure, which I am awful at. Well, it looks 0 because I haven't closed any, but some of these information might be useful. And again, these are out of the box. You can modify these as needed if you take other stuff into consideration as well, and just making sure that you're aware that they exist because they're useful. All right, so I am at the time that I want to start working into automation. So I showed you a little bit about creating some automation rules and but I didn't show you anything about playbook. So that's really what I'm going to spend the rest of the time with. All right, I'm going to start with the tool called STAT, which is not officially a Microsoft tool, but it was developed by Microsoft employees, and it's very cool. I'm a huge fan of it, so I'm going to share it with you. MStat, aka .ms MStat. This is also on the list of links. This is it's because building automation is usually pretty easy using, because you use Azure Logic Apps. If you've used Azure Logic Apps for any other thing, first of all, we offer a lot of them out of the box. So you're going to find them here or here. Playbook templates. There's a lot of playbook templates, and a lot of them come also with the solutions. So you're going to find a lot of playbooks that are like even create Jira ticket. We have playbooks that are, there's even a whole solution for ServiceNow that is bidirectional, by the way. There's a lot. Send a basic email. Send, there's a lot that is available. Even Teams updates are available too. But this is more about automating the research of an incident, like an actual investigation, and then taking that research and making automated and bringing that information to the SOC analyst. And so that's why they built this tool. And this is a set of modules. The modules are really playbooks themselves. Well, there's a connector and then there's playbooks. And so when you install this, you're going to get all of these modules, and I'm going to show them to you in action, but just so you have an idea of what you get a base module that in order to make all of these modules work, you have to first configure this one always. You're going to get modules that are going to be able to get information from an Azure Active Directory based on risks. So like if the user had MFA failures or MFA fraud reports, there's one specifically for files. There's one to run KQL. There's a Defender for Cloud Apps that actually gets the investigation score for that account, which is really cool. By the way, this one requires a little bit more setup than just the initial setup. You get a Defender for Endpoint. You get this one, which I think is super nice, the out of office one. It'll get information whether the user has an automatic reply set up, and then it brings that information into the incident. And then there's the Sentinel related alerts, threat intelligence, UEBA, watch list, risk scoring, and then just to run to do a trigger another playbook too. So I'm going to show you first. I'm going to show you the deployment. Deployment is you can deploy it directly from here, and then you run this script. Just make sure that you update the tenant, because as you noticed, it's gonna get information from Azure AD tenant. So it's going to grant permissions on the Azure AD tenant, so which is the reason why you need this permissions here to run it. It does need the subscription ID and the resource group name where Sentinel workspace is. So that's the information that you need. Then you can run that script, and then you have then your modules will have the permissions they need to run. I'm going to show you what that looks like here. I'm actually going to show you the sample one. There's a stat. Wait, I have like a few different subscriptions, so I got to make sure I run this one on the right place. This is the sample one that comes with it, just a playbook. So by the way, playbooks in Sentinel can have 3 different triggers: incident level, alert level, or entity level. So an incident can have 30 different alerts, right? And so an alert can have, a VM, an account, all sorts of different entities. So you can create playbooks that can trigger any of those levels. So this one is incident level, the sample one. And like I said, the base module. What do I do? Did I get disconnected?
No, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, good, good. I think I'm having issues here. All right. Okay, so the base one is entities. Sorry, base module, and it's going to get information about entities. By the way, if I don't have this information here, I'm actually going to show you how you would go. When this is information that is actually coming out of your Sentinel incident. So if I wanted to put this information in here, all I have to do is look for the entities dynamic content, which is actually coming from, as you can see, it's coming from Azure Sentinel Incident Creation, which is this action right here. And I can do the same thing for the other ones. So these are the three pieces of information that the base module is going to need. Besides that, I can add additional parameters on this particular base module. So I can add account comments. So if I wanted to get information about the account and insert that into the incident comments, I can just set this to true. And I can, if I wanted to add IP comments, I can set that to true. And if I wanted to enrich it with IP geodata, I can set that to true. So I can get all that information and then bring it into the comments of the incident. For this module, this one is AAD risks module. So I can set, again, you see how the base module here is the body? This module has to run before any of these modules. This is like, regardless of what you're constructing or what other modules you're using, make sure that your base module is the first one to be configured, because that one you're going to need for all the other ones. So in the case of Azure AD, I put in my base module here, and then I said how many days I want to go back and whether I want to get information about MFA failure. I'm actually going to set that to true because I'm going to save it. And MFA fraud, if your tenant has been set up where users can actually report fraud and you want to make sure that the SOC analyst has that information, then you can add that. And again, you have these other, actually, I'm not going to add tasks, but I could add incident comments based on that information. I could also add tasks. Remember the task that I showed you earlier? You couldn't create tasks using this module here. I'm not going to do that for this one. I'm just going to add incident comments. Then I can also, this is the related alerts module. It's actually going to pull information about related alerts, and it's going to bring that information into the incident. Again, I'm going to set this one. I could add incident tasks. I could add, in this case for alerts, I could actually add a KQL filter. And I can see this becoming useful, especially if you want to, if you're attaching it to a specific type of incident and you only want to show a certain amount of alerts that are related to it, this would become very useful. Check host, checks IPs, and it can do all of that in here. I'm going to set this to, oops, not that. I'm going to set that to true. And then threat intelligence module, and pretty much the same information. There's this risk card module that kind of takes all of this, and depending on how you feed it, it would take and kind of like score it, is the base word, and then determine the information that is going to be put into the comments. And then actually based on the scoring, you can say based on the total score, and in this case it's 40, it can, if it's true, then it can update the incident and it can set the risk, the severity to high. And if it's false, then it actually sets the severity to informational. It can also, you can do a whole lot of other things, obviously, but this is just an example of the one, that they're showing here as an example. I'm actually going to save this one. I'm going to run this one on one of the incidents so that you can see how this works. Go back. And I'm going to choose successful logon. Actually, I'm going to pick one for Okay, explicit MFA deny, because I know this was Barbie, so I'm gonna run it on this one. So run playbook. See, if I'm running it from here, I'm running the playbook at incident level. So I'm gonna show the stat sample one. I gotta make sure that I run it on the right one, the right subscription, because I have access to a lot of subscriptions. It's gonna run for a little bit in there. Actually, I'm gonna go into the incident 1 second. So I ran it right directly from there. I can also run it from here. This would also run it at incident level. If I wanted to run the alert level, if I wanted to run any kind of playbooks that have alert trigger, I would be able to run them from here. And for entities, I would also be able to run, but you would have to have created a playbook that runs at those levels. And I'll show you some that run at that level in a minute when I start doing the integrations with Azure OpenAI. So anyway, let me see if this is finished. Yep, still running. I probably should have ran it and then showed you what the what the stat shows. Actually, I am going, while we wait for that, let me go into the next area. All right. And of course it's finished. If it failed, by the way, you could click on view run and then go troubleshoot what the issue is. Actually, if it fails, it would see how this little thing in green goes here. It would have been red, and you could go see exactly what went wrong. All right, so I want to show you the information that the stat module updated. So it updated all this information. It did the calculated risk score, because that was the last thing that that I got here. But it also get a all the related alerts in here. And I didn't even run the Defender for Cloud Apps one, but you do get AAD user risk, which right now is high because I've been abusing that user. Total MFA failed attempts, you get 1. And you also get information about that. This is actually coming from the base module. So this is the job title of the person, whether it is an AAD privilege, which it is because it has some permissions that are there. It also has information on the IP that in this case it was actually coming from Iceland. I was using a Tor browser, so that's why you see Iceland there. But it does give you some pretty useful information. I didn't show you the out of the office one, but because it wasn't part of the playbook, but if it was, it would have shown you whether that user was out of the office, if you had a message, what was the message, and all that useful information. Okay. Now, I am going to show you, and I think this is a super big fan of this this modules. The stat modules in general to me are super useful. I actually built a playbook that builds upon that, and it actually connects to Azure OpenAI. Before I jump into demo that I do want to be clear about one thing. I'm going to show you this architecture. I have integrations that run between Sentinel and OpenAI. In fact, a lot of my initial testing with OpenAI was directly with just like your, ChatGPT type service. But the ones that I'm showing now, they're actually Sentinel to Azure OpenAI. And this Azure OpenAI service is running on my subscription under my control. So this is a very different scenario than just going out there to the world. This is Azure OpenAI, and I'll show you. First, I'm going to show you some scenarios, and then I'll show you my Azure OpenAI. And by the way, I'm doing this because I think I'm a huge fan of it personally. But I could probably talk about this all day long. Anybody that knows me knows that. But to me, I think it's an area that can really help security operations analysts. We know that there's a lot of burnout in some of these jobs. We know that you can't even find enough people to train the new people that are coming along. So I saw a lot of opportunities, and so that's what I have been testing, and so that's what I'm going to be sharing with you. Some partners have taken these integrations and just created their own, and even did so much better than what I'm showing you here. So feel free to take these and run with them as you wish. So the first one that I'm going to show you is actually first, I'm going to show you a connector. And I had a reminder to get started with this. On time, right on time. I want to show you the connector that I built. It's very easy to build an Azure Logic Apps connector. Check. Apps connector, custom connector here. So you can let me just show you the ones that I built, but it's pretty easy to get going. I just wanted to show it to you because I'm going to be using it. And which one is it? Oh, by the way, this is the Sentinel Triage Assistant. They create it automatically for you when you deploy that solution, so you don't have to create it. In my case, I'm not that advanced, so I had to create this one. So I created this connector, and all I did was pointed it to the my Azure OpenAI host, which again is my host that runs on Azure, my OpenAI service that runs on Azure. And then the reason, this is really the main reason why I'm using a connector, because I could have just created an HTTP card and point that Logic Apps to just an HTTP call and then go from there. But I wanted to make sure that the API key was stored in a safe manner. So I made sure that I added this security, and I'll show you how that shows in the Logic app when you create it. And so in the case of Azure OpenAI, it uses API key. If you're using OpenAI, it uses, I can't remember what it uses, but it's a different value than this. I have it documented in my blog post, but this is the newer one, which uses Azure OpenAI. And then in the definition, all I did was I came here and I imported it from a sample. So I ran like a curl command to call the connection to the API, and I put the body in there, and then I click an import, and it just imports it. Notice that for Azure OpenAI, it requires an API version, which it doesn't require it for the regular API, OpenAI. It requires, but for Azure OpenAI, it requires an API version. For the, and then in the body, I'm going to edit this. I'm using content and role and max tokens, which is optional. I just like to have control of the max tokens. The role is very important. So in the previous APIs for either for OpenAI, really, you could just make a call with like a question, what is now the user role, and then the actual content, which is your question to OpenAI, and this was going to give you an answer. There's in the newer versions 3.5 and above, there were roles that were added. Besides the user role, now you have a system role and an assistant role. The system role is like the one that actually sets the context. It's almost like you're grounding the data, and I'll show you an example of this. It'll make more sense as I'm doing it. And then you have an assistant role, which is a way to do prompt chaining. And again, I'll show you what prompt chaining is in a minute. But then for the response, I did the same thing. All I did was import it from a sample. I ran a curl command, I imported from a sample, and then this is created. So it's very, very easy. Again, this is something that I have documented step by step on my blog. So if you want to follow this, this is how you do it, but it should be pretty straightforward. All right, so what I created, and you know what, I'm gonna actually run it first. Just go back to Sentinel. so that, because it might take a minute to run. And which one am I gonna run first? Okay, I'm gonna do the initial assessment. And I'm gonna pick, let's actually pick the Tor IP. Okay. Nice. Activity from a Tor IP. Actually, let me make sure that I don't have anything in this one. Oh no, I ran that one already. Let's pick another one. Let's just pick this one, the anonymous IP. This one doesn't have anything. Oh, this one has nothing. Good. All right, let's run it from here. So I'm gonna run it first, and then I'll explain to you because it does take a little bit. The idea with this playbook is that it's gonna generate an initial assessment for, imagine for like a very junior type analyst, SOC analyst, that they just need help, guidance on what to do and how to investigate something. And so this playbook, and I just triggered it, but I'm going to now show you what it does. This one actually, it was failing because I had too many, my message was too big, but this one should be fine. So again, it's triggering on an incident, Sentinel incident. I'm actually using stat to get additional information, like as much information as I possibly can. I'm using the base module because, like I said, you have to use it, and I'm updating all that information, which we'll see in the incident too. And then I'm getting the risks for like MFA. And then I'm actually getting one that I didn't show you previously, which is the Defender for Cloud Apps module information. So I'm actually getting information about the risk that is seen for that user in Defender for Cloud Apps. I'm getting the out of office module. So if there's any message for that person, I'm going to be able to see it. I'm getting some other additional information from UEBA, Defender for Endpoint, which in this case is not going to show much because I didn't do it from an endpoint, and related alerts. And so what I'm doing here is then I'm initializing the variable for like the first one, the account information. And the reason why I'm initializing it is because, let's say, like, for example, in the Defender for Endpoint, in this specific alert, I don't actually have any information from Defender for Endpoint. So I set some value. It's really like a null value here, just so that it still triggers at the end of it. But if there's account information, then I'm appending that information. And this is in natural language because this information is going to get passed to Azure OpenAI as a question, and you'll see that later on. So an account associated with this incident, and the isEnable value is set to whatever that is. The additionally, it has the following assigned roles or permissions. The user is also a member of these groups. So if I have all that information, then I pass it along. I'm also, actually, I think I was also getting some additional information about, which I actually did this wrong, but because I hard-coded Barbie, but I was getting additional information about the watch list, which I then pass over here about that watch list. And then for related alerts, I do the same thing. At the end of putting all of these together, then I take this, well, I'm sending myself an email. This is for testing purposes so that I can see what the information is that is getting passed to Azure OpenAI. But then this is where I build that call to Azure OpenAI. And remember I was telling you about that system message, how you set the context? This is like telling Azure OpenAI how to help this SOC analyst. So it's saying you're a helpful cybersecurity helper that helps analysts working on Security Operations Center. And then it tells you that, basically saying, all these features are available within Sentinel. They can do this, they can do that. And by the way, I can go a lot longer on this. I didn't go as long as I possibly could, but I could go longer. I'm actually going to, sorry, I'm going to open something here so that I can keep track of this. There we go. There we go. Okay. And then I'm passing that was the system role. This is the user role. So this is the actual question that I'm passing to Azure OpenAI. And I'm saying, please generate an initial assessment of this incident based on this information. And then I feed it all the information that I just generated. And then I also tell it, for example, in the case of Defender for Cloud Apps, I'm passing it an investigation priority score, and I'm explaining to it what that is so that it knows how to use it. And then I'm asking it for the report to be in a specific format, just because it's easier to read. And so once it generates that, I'm saying, hey, insert that as a comment. See, I'm adding the comment into the Sentinel incident. And then I also like to add this kind of like a warning, because this is AI, and so it can make mistakes, obviously. So I'm saying, please note that this is an initial assessment that is generated by Azure OpenAI. So make sure that there's basically a human that is reviewing this. So don't just like take this blindly. And this is optional. I'm just sending an email to myself so that I can keep track of the input and output. So what the heck? I'm just going to close this. And I think it ran already because I see the email. I don't know what's in it, but I see the email. So this is what it generated. And I'll show you let me start from the bottom. This is what came from Azure OpenAI. So this is the stuff that it actually updated from the stat module. So again, some information about Barbie. And in this case, actually, we saw the MFA. And it's actually showing me the MCAS user investigation priority score, which is actually pretty high. And I can click on this and then go investigate it there too. And this is actually the stat module too, telling me, hey, out of office, and this is the message that Barbie is currently sending, that it's on a beach laying somewhere. And additional information from MDE. In this case, there wasn't any, so that's why it says unknown. And then additional, and this is all from stat module. So now this is the stuff that was generated by Azure OpenAI. So this is giving the SOC analyst, and like I said, it's always different, so I have no idea what it's going to say in here since I just ran it. This incident is associated with Barbie, which has the role of security administrator. That's important. Barbie is a member of multiple groups, including Data Protect, All Company, Contoso. Barbie is included in the watch list for VIP users, probably because of the blast radius. This indicates that Barbie may have privileged access and could be a target for attackers. Multiple alerts related to this incident, including logon from a risky IP address, blocking sending of messages, and all this stuff. So it actually is telling and an IP address from Iceland has been seen connecting. And then it does, so it gives it like a little bit of, and it did notice that it's out of office. And then it gives it some investigation recommendations, review detailed information, raw events, MITRE tactics and techniques, investigate vulnerabilities within the affected host, check for additional network activity, look for indicators associated, and if applicable, follow Microsoft Sentinel documentations. This actually is running playbooks to isolate affected devices or force users to reset their passwords. So it's, it's kind of like a little bit of help on how to get going, especially for a junior analyst, to get all this information right there into the comments area. And by the way, I'll show you the emails too that I sent to myself. I send them like that. I'm actually sending it to one of the users. It's just for my testing purposes. This is the information that is actually being passed to Azure OpenAI. And this is the output from Azure OpenAI, which is the one that you just saw there, which even includes a link too. So that's one example. And I have a few more examples that I'm going to run through. And okay, so this one, I am going to run, actually, while that does that, I'm going to try to run this on a Mimikatz one. Yesterday I had some issues with it because I have so many of those. Might be the same problem today, but we'll see. Let me just run, actually, let me make sure that I don't have, do I have anything in this one? Yeah, I do. Okay, so let's pick one that is simple. Has nothing in it. Okay, this one's clean. So I was gonna run, because I showed you one that didn't have any NDE data. So I wanted to show you one that actually may have some NDE data. So I'm gonna just trigger that. And then while I trigger that, I'm gonna start on a different playbook. We'll come back to that one. I have to run this one from the other tenant because I don't have any of those alerts on the other tenant. So this is a playbook this is actually one of the first playbooks that I created. And it was then later improved tremendously. Let me see. So I'm gonna run it here first, and then I'll also show it to you. So this one actually runs on instance from rubric. And I might have to expand this. I'm gonna pick one of these ransom. And let me make sure that there's nothing again in there, that I haven't run anything previously in this. Okay, there's nothing in there. So this is a ransomware, and I'm gonna trigger the playbook first, just so that we can see the result, so we don't have to wait forever. Like I said, you see this one, I actually have two versions of it. I have an OpenAI one and an Azure OpenAI one. I'm gonna run this one first. I'll show you the difference in a minute if you're interested to find out. But I will run it. So what this, and I'll click on it so you can see it. What this playbook does is, this one doesn't use that at all. It just gets information from Sentinel, and then it goes to Azure OpenAI, and it gives it information about the Rubrik Security Cloud. So it's feeding it all this information because this is going to trigger on a Rubrik incident. So it's feeding it information about how this connector works, the types of tables that Rubrik uses for the various different types of data, and all these abilities that are within there. And then it also talks about the Rubrik Sentinel connector, which has some playbooks and what those playbooks do. So it's really using that system message to feed it a ton of information to Azure OpenAI to see it, hey, this is the type of stuff that you can do within Sentinel for these types of alerts. So it's really putting a lot of, and then it asks the question. This is the user rule. So it's asking, please provide the steps to investigate. So notice that I'm asking for steps, and I'm asking specifically for 3 steps. And then what I do is, this is where I use that, I was telling you about prompt chaining earlier. And I know I'm getting into the weeds of AI, but just bear with me for a minute. So what I'm doing is, because the Azure OpenAI API doesn't know what answer it gave me here. Like, it doesn't have a memory of that. It's not stateful. So I have to feed it this answer in here, which is what I'm doing here. I'm feeding it this answer here. And then I say, hey, please provide only step 1 of your answer. The reason is I'm going to take this step, and then I'm going to create that as a task. Remember, I showed you the tasks earlier? So I'm adding task 1 based on step 1. And then I do the same thing for step 2. I feed it the answer that it gave me previously, and I say, okay, now I want step 2. And then I feed step 2. And then after all those 3 steps, then I want some KQL queries, please. And so I, again, actually in here, actually, I even went a little bit further. So in my system one, I went ahead and told it a whole bunch of information about the schema of those tables, so that when it generates that KQL query, it's a, it's a good one. It's not just like randomly making stuff. So, and then I said, hey, please provide the steps. Sorry, no, that was the answer to the other one. Please provide a KQL query for step 2. And so, and then I take that information and then I update the incident with it. And I also add a comment at the end that says, hey, SOC analyst, this is added, created by OpenAI. Review the task and complete if appropriate, because again, it's AI. I also put some tags on these too, and that might be, if you're testing this, probably a good thing to do, because it is AI. So you probably don't, you want to be able to see what it's been doing. So maybe you want to add some tasks and then track what it's been doing later on and how it's been providing information. I'm going to refresh here. And I can see that it added 4, so I can see that it's almost done. Actually, let me see if it added the note. Okay, so it's done because it added this little note. And I also asked for feedback too in the playbook. So I see that it added the tag, it added the tasks. I have no idea what the tasks are going to look like. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not. We'll see. And the KQL query. Okay, so here, task 1, it says review the alert and gather information. Check any related activity or events in Sentinel, particularly those related to the affected entity. And then enrich the alert, and here you go. So it actually knows that there's a rubric anomaly analysis playbook. So it's telling it, hey, run that playbook so that you can get additional information. So this is very good. And use that data to further prioritize and focus. And then on step 3, it says investigate, describe and investigate and remediate the incident based on available information. I'll restore affected file from rubric backups, isolate affected entities, take steps to prevent similar incidents. So some of this is a little bit generic, but some of that is actually pretty useful. And then it actually gave me a KQL query that actually makes sense, which is based on the table and the schema that I provided. So some of this is being generated on the go, but you get the idea of some of the stuff that you can actually do, which can be pretty powerful. And actually, I told you I was going to show you the 2 versions of this. So I'm going to go back and show you real fast. And this one is the one that connects to OpenAI. So I have a different connector for that. It's created in this very same manner. But there's a little bit of a difference in there, in that, for example, model. In the call to OpenAI, I have to specify the model that I'm using, whereas in the one for Azure OpenAI, I don't. Because it's actually based on a deployment. So when you make the connection to the URL, it connects to that deployment, and each deployment only has 1 model. So I don't have to specify that. I also don't have to, in this one, I don't have to specify the API version, which I do on the other one. But other than that, that's really the main difference. Oh, and the reason why I created the connectors. Remember how I was telling you that this was a good, safe way to keep that API key? See, this is even like defaulting to something, but I can update the API key, but I can't view it. So if I have to run this, especially in the case for MSSPs, if you have to run this on a customer one, you don't have to, worry about storing an API key in an unsafe manner. So that's really the main reason why I created that connector. Right, I'm going to show you one more. I don't know how much time we have, but I'm just gonna. There's this, before I run this one, I'm actually going to run it on this same incident. I'm going to run a playbook that I use to basically cheat. This is a sample. What is this? Rubric here alert. So this one, what this playbook does is just adds a whole bunch of, it runs pretty fast. It adds a whole bunch of comments on the, see, ran already. It adds comments, just like sample comments that that a SOC analyst would have made, because what I want to do here is generate an incident report. So in here, it generated a whole bunch of comments that SOC analysts might have updated just as samples, because the next playbook that I'm going to run actually generates an incident report. Incident report. So again, I'm going to run it and then show it to you while it runs. This one is it loads super fast, super short, tiny. It connects to the incident. It runs a query to basically get the comments from this incident, and then it feeds that to it feeds the incident number, the incident description, incident date, the attachment, which is the output of this query, and then it asks for a report, and then for that report, it sends an email, which I just got. I just got the email because I just saw it. Let me first pull that email. I think it did. Nope, that was not the email. Hasn't run yet. But it sends an email. Oh, actually, this is going to fail. This is connecting to the wrong one. Sorry about that. I can see that this is connecting to the wrong. Oh, it's actually emailing the wrong user, but it's connecting to the right one. No, this should still work. So I should, yeah, here it is. This is the email. So this is the email that it generated. This is an incident report. And by the way, this is just, it's very, I'm not always going to get the same thing, because it's everything related to Azure OpenAI. It's, or really to generative AI in general, it's based on probability. So you're not always going to get the same results. It's in a case like this, it should be something that you should probably, you shouldn't send it directly to the customer, but rather review it first and then send it to the customer. But it goes over everything that I put in those comments, and it summarizes it, and then it makes recommendations. And in some cases, I would actually see like links to it as well. Let me see if I show you one from yesterday. Like, for example, this is the one that I generated yesterday. It's still pretty similar in that it follows, you know, a pretty organized thing with the technical details, because that's what I was asking it for. I was asking it for technical details and recommendations. So it really depends on what you're asking for. But in this case, it actually generated some links too for that other incident. So again, it's very, it's based on probability. It's not deterministic, so you shouldn't expect the same output. These are just examples, kind of just to like get you thinking about how you can use automation in general in Sentinel, but also automation using Azure OpenAI. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit more OpenAI, and then I'm going to cover a little bit of a identity actually for MSSPs. So it's a little bit of a weird combination, but here we go. Okay, so I've been explaining to you how I've been running all these playbooks that run against Azure OpenAI, and they get all those answers, but I haven't showed you my configuration, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then I'm also going to show you a chatbot that I created. And again, has nothing to do with Sentinel, but it does have relation to MSSPs. So this is my Azure OpenAI instance. If you don't have access to this, if you want to test this, please go ahead and request it. I've seen the people that requested come back within a day, within a few hours sometimes. But this is what you would get. And so when you get to your Azure OpenAI instance, let me see when it opens, and you connect to AI Studio, there's this area here where you can chat. And in this chat area, you have the ability to add your own data. And this is important because in my case, the chatbot that I'm going to be showing you is based on data from an MSSP. So I'm going to restart this, make sure that it's actually working. Just going to put a test in there, make sure that it's working. But the data that I have fed it is data that is in this blob storage. And it's basically, these are like contracts for your customers. And these contracts will have information. These are just Word files, as you can see. I'm actually going to show you some of them. Like for Acme Corporation, it looks like this. This is what it looks like. It's a contract, and it tells you who the contacts are, and the SOC actions for ransomware, standard incident response protocol, what they can and cannot do, what they need approval for. Like in here, Jane Smith has to approve and that sort of information. So they're really, really short contracts, but it's an example of data that MSSPs would have, right? So when I created this chatbot that I'm going to show you in a minute, I added data. And you have a few options. You can add data directly from the blob storage, but the problem is if I add it directly from the blob storage and if I make changes tomorrow, then I'm not going to see those changes going forward. And the same thing if I do the upload files, I'm just going to see the data going forward. So what I ended up doing was I'm using cognitive search. And I'm actually going to jump into cognitive search so that you can see what I set up. I set up indexers. So, and actually the indexer is the job itself, but this indexers sample, this one is the one that is actually configured correctly. It's basically taking the data from that blob storage, is indexing it, and then there's a job that runs, and I can configure this probably in a lot more advanced ways than I have set it up, but for now I'm just doing the very basics of it. But my indexer job is just the one that runs here. As you can see, it runs, I think I have it running every day. Yeah, every day on a daily basis. But you can change that as needed. You can, once, hourly, daily, whatever you need. And there's, like I said, there's a lot of options that you have. I'm just using the very basics because I'm not that advanced here. So when I built this chat playground, I pointed it to that cognitive search service, which is named cleverly a favor. And my index is that new customer data sample. And I acknowledge that there's some costs associated with that. I just took the defaults, but you can modify all this in here too. And if I was using semantic search, then I would configure this here, but I'm not. And so I can save and close. And now if I run, by the way, I can test this here and I would be able to get answers as well. But what I did was I deployed this to an application. Actually, there's a new version now, a new Power Virtual Agent Bot. So that's another option. I haven't tested that one. I did a web app. I deployed it to a web app. And so that's the web app that you can actually see here, which is, I did this test earlier. I'm actually going to erase it here and start over again. But I can ask it questions based on that contract data. So let's say I'm working on an incident for Acme, and I access their production servers to make changes. See what it says. And it says, based on information retrieved, Acme prohibits remote access to production servers without explicit approval from either John Doe or Jane Smith. And it gives me a reference to that. And therefore you cannot access to make without their explicit approval. Okay, so what is John Doe's phone number? Right, so I found John Doe's phone number and retrieved document, and his phone number is that. And let's see if that's actually the phone number. Where does it say that? Oh, 1, 2, John, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's it. So this is, and I know it's like a silly example, but I think I thought of this as a tool that could help SOC analysts troubleshoot issues. In fact, I think in one of the playbooks that I added this the URL to this as one of the entries in the comments. So they can actually pull that information directly from there. So let me show you what I mean. So if I'm doing it here, just gonna, is it here? Oh, it's not any of these. Let me just put this in. Oops. Paste text. Okay, let me just make that a link. Save. See if it actually works. Nope, it actually opened a new one. Okay. Before, when I inserted it from the comment, it would actually open it up right here. So you would be able to, but still, I mean, it makes it pretty useful to a SOC analyst to be able to ask questions specifically about that customer that they're working on. So that's one of the examples that I published on. I'm trying to see, I wrote a whole lot of other scenarios, but they're very similar to the ones that I showed you. Oh, wait, there is one that is different. So I wanted to show you that one. So in that case, because all of the ones that I ran were actually incident-based, but there are actually one that is actually alert-based. So I'm actually going to go back to Barbie. And I told you earlier that I could run, let's go back to entities, entity behavior, and I'm going to go to Barbie. I told you earlier that I could run playbooks based on the alert, and I can actually run them directly from here. So there's, I have one playbook that basically says, hey, there's a lot of false positives on this specific alert. Can you recommend anything to make changes to prevent all those false alerts? So I'm just going to run that playbook at the alert level. I wanted something that I could trigger at the alert level. And it's on this instance. I was going to run this one. So I'm actually, it's running. All right, let me just show you the actual playbook real fast so you can see what it does. Notice that the, where is it? Oh, see the trigger now is Sentinel alert as opposed to incident level, which is what I've been running so far. So this is what makes it different. So this one runs a query. It's a pretty simple query that gets the security alert. Basically, what it's actually getting from here is the query that is being used for that alert, the KQL query. And then it sends that to with a whole bunch of information about, again, on the system role, about Sentinel and the various services that you could possibly use, tables that can be used within Sentinel, and just as much information as I can possibly think that would be useful to determining how to improve an alert to prevent false positives. And then I send the actual question, hey, I'm getting this false positives from an incident, and that has this name and that has this KQL query, and then, so please, what can I do to basically make this better? And then what I do in this case is, well, first I send myself an email just to make sure that for my testing purposes, but I actually create a blob. So what I do is I update I have a storage account where I have a bunch of files that review false positives. And so I create a brand new file and with the alert name and the timestamp, just so that in case I ran this more than once. And then I create it with this contents. The contents are, again, my little note about, hey, you're dealing with OpenAI, and then the answer that comes from OpenAI. So let's see what that looks like. I refreshed it. 824, 333. Is that the one? Yeah, new country. Download. I have no idea what this is going to look like. Okay. So this is what it gets. So again, my little note about, hey, this is generated by Azure OpenAI, and the recommendations that it gets on preventing those false positives. Refine the known locations list. This one was for an attempt for a new country, so that makes sense. Adjust the time frame. That probably also makes sense. Refine result type conditions, and it actually makes like a few different, and then it actually is giving me the KQL query update. So refine the known locations variable, adjust the time frame, include the risk assessment from Defender for Identity. I don't know why that did Defender for Identity. Oh, maybe because it's actually coming from an alert that might be related. But it's, like I said, it's never going to be the same thing. And in this kind of scenario, it's really the scenario where AI really shines, because it's brainstorming. The ideas might be way out there, but then, some ideas may actually be useful. And so it kind of gets your, SOC analyst brain running about things that they can do. So some of this stuff might be super useful. Sometimes it doesn't put it in as pretty of a format. Sometimes, but and actually, what I keep doing is that I keep making my system role message a lot more specific, and I also do the same thing with the user message, that I make it a lot more specific. So the more specific that I am, the better output that it determines to be. Okay. All right, so now that I showed you those two things, since we have a little bit of time, I had some options that I wanted to show you if we had some times, which I didn't cover. So I'm going to jump into that. A few things. One, this is more of a reminder before I jump into other stuff. Sentinel has a free trial. So please, make sure that your SOC analysts are aware of it. They can use that for their training solution to test it out. Just please be aware of that. 2, the discount, I covered this already. And 3, there's the data that is always free, which I also covered previously. Okay, so these are the stuff that I didn't get to cover, but I did put some extra slides in case I actually had time. For MSSPs, this will become very useful. There are 3 main scenarios, because when you're creating an MSSP tenant, this question always comes up. It's like, so why do I have to create a new MSSP tenant? Why can't I just use my corporate identity? And my answer is always the same. You can use your corporate identity to manage, but if you're doing like a POC, it makes sense. But if you're going to be managing customers, I don't recommend that, because even though it is supported and it would work, it puts at risk your customers, and it also puts at risk your corporate resources. So what I do recommend instead is something like this, where you have a separate MSSP identity. So that was the MSSP tenant that I shared, and that's the reason for it. You have your corporate identity, but then your SOC analyst will work out of this one. This is not going to be connected to like email, so it's not subject to phishing and things like that. You do still should be using some like MFA, and in fact, you really should be using phishing resistant MFA for those identities, because they are highly privileged identities. So this is, and they're going to be accessing all your customers. So this is our recommendation. There is another, I call it in between, another option. This admin identity would exist within the corporate tenant, but it would be still a separate identity. So this is like if you're not fully ready to go manage, or you just don't have the resources to manage another tenant, you could go with something like this, where it's still a separate identity without the access to the corporate resources, and as isolated as possible. If so, it's kind of an in between, and it's bare minimum kind of option. These are the oh, this is not loading all of it. These are the permissions that are required, and this is really documented already. But these are the permissions that are required to do many of the things that I was showing earlier. The most powerful one within Sentinel is going to be Sentinel contributor. So, but you don't have to have Sentinel contributor for all of your SOC analysts. Depending on if they only need to manage incidents, then you can just go with responder. They can view data, and they can actually manage incidents too. And of course, there's one that just allows them to view data and workbooks and what that might be. So just keep that in mind, and obviously create different groups and give them as little permissions as possible to do the job. And then this is a new one that was added recently for playbook operators. But you can also have a Logic App contributor that can also create and edit playbooks. But if they just need to view and run playbooks, they can just have the Sentinel playbook operator. So this is more provided so that you can plan ahead and make sure that you give least privilege permissions. I created this because I mentioned earlier how some of partners manage not just Sentinel, because Sentinel exists within your subscription, but some partners also manage tenant level resources or services, I should say, like Defender 365 is one of those. So you saw that in my demos, I was able to click on that, investigate on Defender 365, and it worked. But it wouldn't have worked if I didn't have B2B. In my case, I have B2B. But there's another option, which is GDAP. And I'll explain GDAP in a minute. But these permissions are tenant level permissions. So like the security administrator that would give me access to Defender 365, that's a tenant level permission. That's not a subscription level. So this is not something that I can delegate using Azure Lighthouse. I would need, again, either B2B or GDAP. And this is what GDAP, and there's a lot more information about GDAP in the documentation, but this is available to CSPs, partners that are CSPs, and you configure this via Partner Center. And there are some pretty detailed instructions on how to configure this. And you might be familiar with the old version of this, which was called DAP. I think it's Delegated Access. I can't say what the P is for, maybe partners or protocol or something. But the G is for granular. The new one is giving more granular permission. So the idea is that you're going to have a groups within your partner tenant that are going to be delegated specific permissions within the customer tenant. So if you need security admin for like Defender 365, then you can assign security admin only and not have to assign global admin. Or depending on the combination that you have, And then your customer obviously has to agree to these permissions as well. So this is available. And the difference between B2B and GDAP is that with B2B, the user exists on the customer tenant as a guest. With GDAP, the user does not exist. They still have access. There's still a record of them signing in through the signing logs, but it isn't an actual identity that exists in the customer tenant. And that becomes important because certain MSSPs have compliance requirements that they have to meet in order to continue to provide these services. And one of those requirements might be that the identities for their employees do not exist on the customer tenant. So if that's one of your requirements, GDAP is definitely the way to go. Okay, let's see. Okay, this brings me really to the end of everything that I wanted to cover.